欢迎加入我们的听众群，与其他热爱跑步的朋友们互动交流，分享你的想法和反馈。添加小助手微信跑者日历的小写全拼，拉你进群，让我们一同享受跑步的乐趣。
另外也欢迎在小红书和 B 站搜索跑者日历，关注我们的视频内容，期待与你互动。
大家好，欢迎收听跑者日历，我是特别想回到伦敦再看一场英超比赛的男子。
Hello， 大家好，我是今年在英国体验了各种体育赛事活动的佳宁。
这一期我们也比较特殊啊，本期节目是作为英伦多巴胺线上活动的组成部分之一，旨在和大家分享关于英国体育文化的点点滴滴。体育作为一种世界流通的语言，可以让我们打破国界，共享同一种情绪。那我们这一期也特别有幸的请到了 Dominic Stanton， 他是英国使馆新闻参赞，请他来分享英国体育的点点滴滴。尽管这个话题看起来有点大，但实际上我们会从细节和大家聊一聊英国体育那些事儿，尤其是从 Dom 他儿时的一些经历，可以说是有料又有趣。
欢迎大家收听。那其实本期节目我们也欢迎大家在听众群以及评论区和我们互动，我们将选出几位同学获得 Mountain 送出的户外运动羊毛袜和户外越野跑拼色5片帽。刚才提到了一个品牌，这个品牌叫 Mountain， 这个品牌其实大家都管它叫做英国茅台，
注意是英国茅台。
对，因为它的 logo 和茅台那个红蓝配色还有一点点像哈。它是1993年在英格兰阿星顿市成立的，是专为耐力运动而设计的轻量透气服装以及装备的这么一个品牌，所以我们管它叫英国茅台区别于我们之前说到的能量胶品牌那个茅台
和中国的茅台酒。
对，和中国的茅台酒。然后Mountain 北京嘉里中心店目前已经开放营业了，除了经典款，今年还有新品亮相。那感兴趣的小伙伴呢，也可以去线下店体验一下。我今天已经抢先替大家体验了一下。那还是更多的希望大家参与我们在评论区的互动，以及我们听众群的一些互动。我们将会给大家送出 Mountain 提供的奖品。
是我们这期是带有福利的。行，那我们就托付到这里，后面请大家来收听正片。
对，然后大家如果想听原版的话，也可以拖到节目的后半部分，我们也把原版 Dom 的他的这个单口我们剪辑了一下放好了。
对，如果你想练英语听力的话，这是一个特别难得的机会。
没错。
好嘞。
So first of all, Dom, could you introduce yourself to our audience?
对。大家好，我是申东明，我是英国大使馆新闻参赞。So I'm Dom Stanton, and I'm the Communications Counsellor at the British Embassy here in Beijing.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Very good Chinese, actually.
Well, I think you're being very generous there, but thank you.
But it's quite difficult job description. So I think it's very good. But now we will start with English, not Chinese.
That's absolutely fine with me. Yeah.
But it's difficult for us, actually.
Yes, especially me.
Well, I mean, that's also fine with me. That's also
we will
fine
try our
with me.
best.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate it.
那我们就从儿时的体育记忆开始聊起吧，因为我们今天的话题是体育，我们会聊到英国的体育运动。首先呢，我们先来聊聊儿童运动。您小时候会参加什么样的体育运动呢？体育运动是如何融入英国的社区的？这个可以展开来分享一下吗？
好啊，我出生在英格兰北部约克郡的一个大城市利兹。体育运动在约克郡非常重要，是当地的一大特色。利兹有一家足球俱乐部，也就是利兹联。利兹是英国少有的只有一家足球俱乐部的大城市。利兹不像曼彻斯特和利物浦有2家俱乐部争夺支持，也不像伦敦那样有一堆俱乐部。历史上，这里也是板球运动的中心。没错，板球是英国的另一个大型国家体育项目，如今也成了一项大型的全球体育项目。大概30年前，只有在约克郡出生的人才有资格为约克郡打板球，所以当时父辈们会把怀孕的妻子带回约克郡，确保儿子在这里出生，长大以后就有 有资格为约克郡打板球。等年纪大一点，我去了一个叫费瑟斯顿的约克郡小镇上中学。体育运动在费瑟斯顿非常流行，尤其是那里还有橄榄球联赛。在那个英格兰北部的约克郡小镇，最主要的橄榄球比赛就是橄榄球联赛。我的父亲是一个很棒的板球运动员，他的兄弟们也都是体育迷。我从小就被体育运动包围着。从我很小的时候开始，我要么是在看别人玩体育，要么就是自己在玩。可以说，从我记事起，运动就是我生活的一部分。
所以你小时候会打板球、踢足球，对吧？
没错，板球、足球还有许多其他的体育运动。我爸爸以前是一个教师，带过校队。那时候我还很小，还没有到可以认真打球的年纪。他会在周六早上把我们拖出去，一边带队一边看玩。他知道校队打球的时候，我就在街上玩板球。我们时不时的还要去敲邻居家的门，问一问能不能拿一下打进他们花园里的球，或者说拿回被我们踢到烟囱里的足球。我们就像一群在街道上出没的恐怖分子，但在街头打球真的很酷。路的尽头有一块很大的空地，方便车子进来转弯掉头。你可以在没有车的地方搭建自己的运动场。我们会把车库当成足球比赛的球门，把中间的柱子当成板球比赛的小门，把停车场道闸当成网球比赛的网。我敢肯定，当时的邻居很讨厌我和我的兄弟，还有我街上的那群朋友们，因为我们总是无处不在地施展我们的体育技能。在学校也一样。如今回想起在校时光，我对上课的印象真的不大。我和教室里大部分孩子一样，眼巴巴地等着时钟快下课，然后大家会冲出去踢足球、打板球或者做其他运动。感觉体育运动远比学业重要多了。作为局外人，我觉得中国的孩子过得很艰难，因为他们的压力实在是太大了。从很小的时候开始，就要在学业上努力取得好成绩。
对于我们的中小学生来说，我们要上各种各样的课，除了体育课。要是我们参加体育运动的话，那主要还是因为有体育考试。我们得为了参加体育考试而参加各种类型的体育活动或者体育运动。
在我看来，这听起来有一点悲哀。我们现在这么坐着聊天，可能你的听众看不到我，但你大概能猜到我的年龄。学生时代对我来说是很久远的事情了。在我的印象中，参与体育运动就是为了快乐。对于我们来说，运动是一种乐趣，是自我释放，是获得快乐的方式。我认为这真的很重要。对孩子们来说，玩得开心很重要。你不能总想着成就，想着满足老师或父母的期望。一定有一些事情是你单纯为了快乐，为了享受去做的。你做这些事情没有别的原因，只是单纯因为它很有趣，对吧？我知道，我也看到过中国同事和朋友们的孩子会参加很多的课外活动，比如他们总是在周末去上这门课或者那门课，比如舞蹈啊、音乐啊或者其他的一些课程。他们之所以去上这些课程，更多的是为了获得某些成绩，实现某些目标，达到某些水平或者标准。至少从表面上来看，他们不像是为了乐趣而去做这些事情。我觉得这是有点悲哀的。
没错，但是我觉得目前的时代正在发生一些变化。现在很多家长自己就非常喜欢体育运动，所以就出现了很多的二代，所谓越野跑二代呀、跑步二代呀，他们会教孩子各种各样的体育运动，就像我们一样。我没有孩子，但是他有个女儿。
是的，我见过她，很可爱。是的，近些年情况发生了一些变化，中国所有的老师和家长们都已经意识到了体育运动对我们孩子非常重要。在我念书的时候，我们所有的体育课都会被其他的课给占了，可是现在应该不会了。这很好，我认为这是件好事。每当我在公园或者别的地方看到母亲和女儿打羽毛球或者做其他运动的时候，我总会止不住的微笑。我很高兴看到这样的景象。我想其中一个原因就在于这让我想起了我的童年，而且这是件好事情。我真的很高兴看到这样的事情。你问我英国学校课程是如何将体育运动纳入其中的。英国有一套全国通用的课程体系，也就是说有一套基本上可以说是标准的东西。它规定了对于不同年龄段和不同群体的孩子，每个学校应该教些什么。体育运动绝对是其中不可或缺的一部分。大家明白体育运动的重要性，一方面可以给孩子一个释放自我和自身能量的窗口，但另一方面也是因为我认为这可能是我们接下来要详细讨论的话题。体育在塑造性格方面发挥着重要的作用。体育运动可以教给孩子们重要的人生课程，塑造并影响他们的未来。体育运动能够教会孩子们输赢，成为团队的一员，尽你所能，以及如何面对成功，如何应对挫折和失败。所有这些对于塑造孩子们的性格都很重要。体育运动会让人明白，世界并非围绕着你转动，你身处一个广阔的世界。如果你想取得成就、获得成功等等，你就必须和他人合作。我认为这是一个非常重要的方面。 当然，英国也很看重学术成绩，英国可以从中国的教育体系中学到很多的东西，比如数学或者其他学科。但我认为英国的国家课程体系已经认识到了体育的重要性。当你还是个孩子，当你在长大成人的过程中，体育运动非常重要。不过当你长大成人之后，体育运动依然对你的整个生活很重要，它会给你带来丰富的社交生活，有利于你的身心健康。与此同时，体育运动对你的精神健康也很重要。
那下面我们再来聊聊奥运会吧。因为在奥运会期间呢，体育运动教会了我们很多东西，比如爱。那您认为来自体育运动的爱是什么？是怎么表现的呢？
奥运会真的很棒，对吧？我不知道你怎么想，但我超级爱奥运会。对，从奖牌数量上来说，这届奥运会英国非常的成功。英国获得的奖牌总数比上届要多，但有点令人失望的是，金牌数量比上届少。中国也取得了非常好的成绩，40枚金牌数量与美国相同。中国这次取得的金牌数量高占榜首，这非常棒。除此之外，你可以在奥运会上看到我们的运动员是如何成为真正的体育明星的。比如中国的举重运动员，他赢得金牌的时候跟教练一起走上了领奖台，然后还举起了他，那真是太棒了。整个奥运会期间充满了各种精彩的个人故事。
所以其实我们能感受到的这个运动是充满了爱的，对吧？
是的，我是这么认为的。
是的，我想还有很多这样的故事。我还看到一张表，总结了有多少人在奥运会上求婚。
是的，不少人在奥运会上求婚呢。是不是还有一个中国的游泳运动员？
不是羽毛球运动员。
对，是的，是羽毛球运动员。
很合理，对吧？因为羽毛球是中国的优势项目，而且被求婚的运动员拿了羽毛球混双的冠军。
很幸运，他们都答应了，对吧？他们以后没准会后悔的。当然是开玩笑了。这样很好，我很高兴看到这样的双喜临门，在全世界的见证下，是一个浪漫的时刻。
是的，是很浪漫，我还蛮喜欢那个时刻的。
我想我们都会为这一瞬间而动容，对吧？因为体育运动就是情感，不是吗？体育运动本身就是一种情感，所有的体育故事都是富含情感的，而且这并不常见，对吧？当你在完成一项壮举之后，单膝跪地向你的未婚妻求婚，我甚至惊讶没有更多的人在奥运会上求婚。
I'm surprised it doesn't happen more often.
OK， 那接下来我们聊一聊体育和英国社区的一些关系。我从一些资料上就读到过，英国一些社区有自己的体育俱乐部。我记得我曾经读过奥沙利文的自传，他在自传里面提到他有加入过一个跑步俱乐部，并且和他们一起训练。英国是有很多这样的体育俱乐部吗？
我想是的，像奥沙利文这样的斯诺克天才，他也会参加社区的体育俱乐部。我之前提到过运动对于精神健康的重要性，奥沙利文就是一个特别好的例子。对于那些喜欢运动的人来说，他是天生的斯诺克天才。参加体育运动跑步是他管理自身心理健康的非常重要的方式。很多年来他一直被焦虑症所困扰，我认为对他来说，跑步是帮助他保持良好精神状态的一种非常重要的方式。英国一直有各种体育俱乐部，老师或教练会发掘有运动天赋的孩子们，并引导他们加入这些俱乐部。许多代表英国、英格兰、苏格兰、威尔士、北爱尔兰参赛的运动员都是通过这些俱乐部走出来的。这几年有一个新的浪潮，就是休闲跑者的数量有所增长。现在英国最受欢迎的应用之一，就是我们的国家医疗服务体系开发的 Couch to 5K， 服务对象就是那些从未真正参加过体育锻炼的人，这些人并不是专业的跑者。Couch to 5K 可以给他们提供一份9周的训练计划，帮助他们从小白成长为可以在大约30分钟内跑完5公里的跑者。
所以如果我住在英国的话，那我就可以下载这个应用程序，然后找一个教练来教我。
是的，你可以通过这个应用找到一位线上的教练，在你跑步的时候远程指导你。想象你的教练可能是美国跑步金牌得主 Michael Johnson， 也可能是英国7项全能金牌得主 Dennis Lewis。 他们会在耳旁告诉你，好了，现在你可以放慢速度了，或者说如果你现在感觉良好，你可以稍稍加快速度，但不要跑得太快。因此 Coach to 5K 发挥了巨大的影响力，成功的把那些一天到晚窝在沙发里的人带去公园或者街上跑。 跑步。我想你已经看到了，参加 parkrun 的人越来越多了。人们会在周六的早晨去伦敦的巴德西公园，或者说利兹的奥特利公园，或者朗德海公园，或者其他一些地方跑步。大家会组团一起跑，这样有益于他们的身体健康，同时也是一项很棒的社交活动。他们可以见到一大堆新朋友，更丰富的活动，这对他们的身体、心理健康以及社交生活都有很大的好处。事实上，很多人都和奥沙利文有点像，跑步有益于他们的精神健康，减轻了他们的孤独感，通过结识志趣相投的群体产生了归属感。与此同时，他们也能够感受到跑步给身体健康带来的益处。我不清楚你们的情况，但是我肯定对，你看起来比我健康多了。周二晚上我踢了场5人足球，表现还可以吧，谈不上踢得多出彩。最后下场的时候我很累，但又很兴奋。我能感受到运动带来的多巴胺刺激的感觉，即使在开始运动前5分钟，你可能还会在做心理斗争，我今晚偷个懒吧，不去跑步了，好像我又应该去锻炼一下，但我工作了一整天，有点累了。但事实上，运动过后你会感觉更好，身心各个方面都得到了抚慰，哪怕很累，你也能感受到自己的身体状况更好了，同时你也会觉得精神焕然一新，精神状态更好。奥沙利文确实是一个很好的例子，显然很多人都把他视作英雄，对吧？他可以激励大家。就他个人来说，哪怕他不是有史以来最出色的斯诺克运动员，但他发现了跑步的意义，以及发现了跑步给他带来的益处和改变，我觉得这就很棒。
没错。所以提到 parkrun， 其实我们都是 parkrun 的爱好者。我们都已经跑过5次 parkrun 了。
你们在哪个公园跑步
？Bushy Park。上次我去了 Bushy Park， 我很喜欢那里，因为 Bushy Park 是 parkrun 的起源地。
是吗？我想过公园跑起源于哪里这个问题，但我不知道原来是在 Bushy Park。我知道伦敦的肯宁顿公园在新冠期间突然就成了每个人的户外健身房，当时我就住在那附近。也许是因为当时我们每个人每天只能出去活动1次，肯宁顿公园就这样变成了一处真正的共享社区设施。你可以看到公园对一个社会的重要性，人们可以在这里相遇、锻炼身体、参加户外活动。我都不知道原来公园跑是起源于 Bushy Park， 那我得去打卡一次。
是的，你应该去 Bushy Park 打卡一下这个 parkrun。那伦敦马拉松赛前我去了 Bushy Park， 有许多来自世界各地的人都去参加 Bushy Park 的 parkrun， 所以这个队伍是非常庞大的，因为这就是 parkrun 一切开始的地方，就是所谓的起源地。
你的听众是不是都知道你跑过伦敦马拉松呢？
对的。
你应该在节目里面提到过1-2次吧。
我们很希望 parkrun 可以来到中国。
我想会的，因为我们都看得到在中国公园的社区属性，对吧？大家在黄昏时分来到公园跳舞、玩耍，或者在2棵树之间拉根绳子打羽毛球、踢毽子、快步走等等。午休的时间在使馆附近的日坛公园，你会看到很多人在这里跑圈。所以我认为公园跑在中国是一件很自然能够融合的事情。我很惊讶中国还没有人组织过 parkrun， 我可能会试着抢在其他人之前注册中国的 parkrun 商标，赚他一大笔。
因为现在跑步在中国是一件非常流行的事儿。
是的，我早上在我的公寓楼附近能看到很多晨跑的人，即使今年夏天这么的热，有时候我也会跟他们一起跑。我会尽量选择很早或者很晚的时候跑。
没错，因为现在真的是太热了，今年夏天尤其的热，非常热。
是的，确实太热了。
但是早上和夜里其实还是比较适合跑步的。那接下来其实我想聊一聊奥运会上的那些运动项目。据我所知呢，很多体育运动其实都是起源于英国的，比如说羽毛球、网球、乒乓球、现代足球等等。我有一个好奇的点，就是为什么英国在这些项目上却没有展示出世界最顶尖的水平呢？UK is not at the highest level of the auto sports.
确实是一个好问题，但我不确定我能给出很好的答案。首先，一项体育运动在全世界流传开来，他们就属于每个人，对吧？因此，即使英国是现代体育运动的发源地，也不代表它就能永远是世界上体育水平最高、最出色的国家。其次，各项运动兴起的方式其实略有不同。羽毛球实际上起源于英属印度， 一旦体育运动走向世界，它就有了自己的生命。正如我说，很多现代体育运动都是19世纪从英国兴起的。羽毛球是19世纪中期从英属印度兴起的，当时的军官们热衷发展这项新型的竞技性球类运动。事实上，羽毛球一开始有点像毽子，你要让羽毛球尽可能长时间的停留在空中，没有网，也不是2个人或者4个人比赛，你要做的只是让羽毛球一直停留在空中。羽毛球的打法随着时间的推移发生了变化，随着羽毛球的发展，规则的改变，它在世界各地流传开来，各式各样的人都开始打羽毛球。某些体育运动在某些国家特别流行，对吧？比如说乒乓球，乒乓球也是一个很好的例子。乒乓球同样起源于19世纪的英国，而且大体上是英国上层阶级才会玩的室内游戏。而且最早的时候，乒乓球不是用拍子和球来打的，它只是一种游戏。而且从玩法上，你也能看出来到底是哪些人在玩这个游戏。当时他们用的球拍是空的雪茄盒，打的球是香槟塞，雪茄和香槟。从这2样东西上，你就可以看出是哪些人在玩这个游戏了。后来随着网球运动兴起，户外网球变得越来越流行了，乒乓球开始变得更像微型网球，人们开始制造专门用来打乒乓球的特殊的球桌。过去人们会在餐桌上放一排书，用过晚餐之后，所有的女士都会走进客厅开始谈天说地，那男士们呢，则会拿出雪茄盒，把他们的雪茄倒空，然后打开香槟塞，让香槟塞越过餐桌上那盘书籍构成的网。这在现代人看来可能是有一些奇怪，但是在当时，这对英国上层阶级来说很正常，他们现在可能也觉得正常吧，我不知道。但体育运动是会随着时间的推移发生变化的，然后他们会进一步的流传开来。乒乓球流传到其他地方之后，可能就有一些人找了些网来代替书，然后因为某些原因，因为文化或者其他什么的原因，乒乓球被某些国家接受了，成为了某些国家的运动。显然，现在人们会把乒乓球和中国联系在一起。乒乓球现在几乎可以算是一项由中国代言的体育运动了，很多人都这么想。虽然乒乓球起源于英国维多利亚时代的客厅，但那是100多年前的事了，对吧？事情现在已经发生了变化。足球也是一样，现代足球的规则是通过一次民意投票确定的。在伦敦共济会酒吧，大概是在1860年或者1861年，有一群人聚集在一起，解决有关足球的分歧。因为在某些地方，足球是可以用手拿着跑的，但在其他地方不能用手。大家坐下来尝试明确足球的规则。就像现在人们坐在酒吧高谈阔论，或许仍没办法达成共识，所以到最后，这项运动被一分为2，一半变成了橄榄球，可以在比赛里用手拿球传球都行，另一半则演变成了现代的足球，除守门员之外，其他的球员都不能用手，你得用脚把球踢到球门。不过一旦足球流传到了世界其他地方，其他国家就会把它变成自己的运动，对吧？我想最早在南美洲踢足球的是19世纪末在南美洲建造铁路的英国工人，但是现在世界上没有比拉丁美洲更疯狂的足球迷了。也许中国一些地方有更疯狂的球迷，我不知道，但南美洲的球迷真的是很疯狂。有的观点认为，历史上最伟大的足球运动员都来自南美洲。很显然，梅西之前是马拉多纳，在之前是贝里，所以这些体育运动会流传到世界的各个地方，被世界其他的地方人们所接受。不管出于什么原因，一些国家在这些运动领域成为了真正的强国。至于英国，从人口上来说，它仍然是一个相对较小的国家，我们不可能什么都做到最好。
那就像中国，现在乒乓球在中国生根发芽，我们夺取了在乒乓球项目上几乎可以得到的所有的荣誉。
当然，我觉得你们称霸了乒乓球领域，真的，你们赢得了乒乓球的所有金牌。奥运会上有几场接近决赛的比赛都非常的精彩，比如中国和朝鲜的混双比赛就是一场非常精彩的比赛，我很喜欢那场比赛。这只是其中一个例子，体育运动就是这样，对吧？你不可能，或者说至少很难做到最好，所有的体育运动都是这样，对吧？
没错，这届奥运会上，我们不仅拿了乒乓球的所有金牌，还包揽了跳水所有的金牌。
是啊，这也很棒，非常的厉害。他们很有运动精神，技术很强。英国在跳水方面也取得了成功。英国在其他一些运动上的表现也特别好，比如说赛艇。英国的赛艇队除了3名运动员之外，其他运动员都作为团队的一员获得了奖牌，无论是金牌、银牌还是铜牌。 英国也非常擅长马术和骑行，基本上可以说骑在什么上面参加的运动，英国做的都不错。我也不知道为什么我们更擅长和坐着有关的运动，随你怎么想吧。体育运动的发展是有节奏的，就像生活一样，也许再过个20来年，又会有其他擅长某些体育运动的国家出现。
但是在女子800米的项目上，你们的运动员 Kili 表现是非常出色的。
是的，她真的非常棒，非常的令人满意。我想我们前面谈到了对孩子们的期望，我想作为成年人，你依然能够感受到那种别人对你的期待。大家都对 Kili 寄予厚望，每个人都认为他会获胜，而且他有能力在应对大家厚望的同时发挥出最佳的水平。他表现得比世界上任何人都好，太不可思议了。你不仅要具备极佳的体能，而且必须有承载大家期望的强韧的心理素质，要能在全世界的目光下发挥出最佳的水平，太不可思议了，真的很棒。社交媒体上有一些很棒的视频，是关于观看他比赛的英国电视评论员的，我们和粉丝一样激动、跳跃和欢呼。我也看到了一些他的亲朋好友坐在一起看他比赛，期待他获胜的照片，我也很高兴看到这样的景象。我相信中国也一样，对吧？中国各地也会有运动员的家人和朋友们聚在电视机前观看他们子女的比赛。
对了，还有你们的男子铁三运动员 Alex。
是的，铁三运动员，他那枚金牌拿的有点戏剧性。我认为他不算是以绝对的优势领先这场比赛，他一直到最后才领先，最后拿到了金牌，也很棒。
他是一个非常优秀的运动员。
我想他是从上届奥运会开始真正大放光彩的。在他出现之前，有一对来自我家乡约克郡的包里兄弟，多年来他们一直是英国铁人3项运动中的佼佼者。Alex 也是出现在铁人3项中的新星，看到他夺得金牌真的是太好了，很棒。我很高兴看到他为英国赢下了又一枚金牌。虽然他并不是来自约克郡。
很不错。好吧，我想我们该进入下一个话题了。我想问问有关于羽毛球和乒乓球的问题。你打过乒乓球或者羽毛球吗？
我打过，我记得是我妈妈教我打的羽毛球，她上学的时候就打过。我还记得我们去过苏格兰的体育机构。去了一个叫做法尔科克的小镇当地的体育中心，我的妈妈就是在那里出生的，她教会了我和我的兄弟如何打羽毛球，但后来我就不打了。我有很长一段时间没有打过羽毛球，但是几年前我去印度工作了几年，我在那里又重新开始了打羽毛球。我发现我真的很喜欢打，我不是打得特别出色，但是我记得的技巧还够用，不会让自己太尴尬，也不会破坏其他人打球的体验。羽毛球再次成为了我社交日程表上非常重要的一部分，我们每周4都会聚在一起打羽毛球，打完再喝个啤酒。羽毛球成为了我每周都非常期待的一项活动，就像在北京的时候，我每周都很期待周2的5人制足球比赛，那是我一周里非常重要的活动之一。至于乒乓球，我想我在学校的时候就开始打乒乓球了。乒乓球在英国的学校里非常的常见，因为打乒乓球基本上用不上太多的设备和空间，乒乓球是一项非常简单的运动。我发现我在这方面有点天赋，我很快就打得很好了。我想我的老师们也看到了这一点。你知道这种感觉吧？你可能是班上最擅长打乒乓球的学生，然后你开始和另一个班的同学打，结果发现其实你并没有想象中打得那么好，于是你就开始深入其中，慢慢你就知道自己的水平在哪里了，并且有动力去不断的提升自己的球技。从10岁、11岁一直到13、14岁，我表现的都很好。我参加了全国的比赛，挤入了国家级的排名系统，虽然只是吊车尾，但是这套系统里我可以开始争取奖杯了。我从来没有好好说过我自己的故事，我有点我算是有一点天赋吧，但不是最有天赋的那种。还有很多人比我更加自律，他们付出了更多的努力，是吧？所以他们成功了，他们付出了许多努力。所以过了几年之后，我清楚地意识到我永远无法超过某个水平，而且到了那个年纪，人的生活中就会出现许多的其他兴趣，比如音乐、艺术等等。所以除非知道自己有天赋、意志、喜爱和自律，真的能专注地投入其中，否则很多人都会在那个年纪放弃运动。不仅如此，他们也会放弃很多其他小时候对他们很重要的东西，这只是因为他们到了某个年纪，他们就是想要停下来，不再参加这项运动了，就像其他事情一样。 事实上，后来我就没怎么打过乒乓球了，顶多度假的时候打。后来我的乒乓球桌只是一张桌子了，想想就令我感到羞愧。有时候我会想重新拿起球拍，看看我还会不会打。但我想乒乓球确实是我最擅长的体育运动，是我学的最多、参与的最多也最擅长的体育运动。乒乓球是我唯一真正参与其中的，不仅是为了社交，而是把它当作一项竞技体育来参加的体育运动。当时我为了参加乒乓球比赛走遍了全国，我还记得我曾坐轮渡去爱尔兰参加青少年公开赛。我很喜欢回忆那段时光，我对乒乓球只有美好的回忆。真的，我有点后悔没有更认真的、更努力的去练乒乓球，没有再坚持一段时间，看看我能不能走得更远。但我真的很享受打乒乓球，我很喜欢跟我一起打乒乓球的人，我很享受他们给我带来的这个体验，那真的很棒，很棒。
其实就是非常单纯的享受运动带来的乐趣，不管是乒乓球、羽毛球还是其他。
是啊，不过也不是一直都只有快乐。我讨厌失败，我曾经是一个很难面对失败的人。我想某种程度上来说得到了一个教训，我发现我无法释怀。打过3个来回之后，我还是会揪着我5分钟之前犯的错误。我发现我很难只专注于当下。精英运动员们都会说，你必须专注于当下，事情过去了就是过去了，你要忘记它，专注于下一件事儿，把所有的精力都投入到下一刻，放过自己。
也就顺其自然了。
是，那就算了，让它过去。我当时就有点无法放手释怀。
其实这还是一个很有趣、很值得被讨论的话题。我非常想知道，到底是什么样的人在这样的成长路径和选拔形势下会成为职业运动员的？可以举个例子吗？
我不知道，一定程度上，就像我说的，现在精英体育运动相关的基础设施更加发达了，所以像英超联赛这样的赛事，全世界几十亿球迷都会怀着一种期待的心情聚在一起观看。英超俱乐部，甚至是英国第1级的联赛职业俱乐部，现在都拥有着非常发达的球坛和教练基础设施，大家都会在孩子中寻找有足球天赋的好苗子。我认为这有好有坏，不是吗？好的地方在于，有天赋的孩子可以得到最高水平的指导。但我也确实在想，那些运动的快乐呢？那种纯粹为了快乐而玩的体育的体验呢？如果你的孩子是少数几个能在体育运动方面取得成功的天才，从小就沿着这套系统向上攀爬，如果你看到自己的孩子4、5岁的时候踢足球就能踢出欧洲杯决赛的感觉，如果你发现自己的孩子像球星贝林厄姆一样，或者你希望自己的孩子最终成长为贝林厄姆，那么你可能会在孩子很小的时候就为他请教练。我认为这可能会阻碍孩子享受纯粹的运动带来的快乐，他无法体验那种纯粹为了快乐而玩的体育精神。
那其实父母本质上是希望孩子们获得快乐的，如果他们想要通过孩子去赚钱，其实也是可以的。我可以这么理解吗？
我想更普遍的情况是，很多人希望通过孩子来实现自己的梦想，对吧？就像很多人一样，我曾经梦想为利兹联足球俱乐部打前锋，帮助利兹联进球赢得联赛冠军。全国各地都有人这么想，只不过他们不一定是想为利兹联效力。到处都有拥有体育梦想的家长。我猜怀揣体育梦想的爸爸可能更多一些。现在女性体育运动发展如此之快，或许也会有一些女性希望通过女儿或者儿子实现他们自己的体育梦想，对吧？现在时代变了，但我想还是有很多父母想通过孩子实现自己的梦想，因为这些父母从来没有真正的实现过自己的这些梦想，这些梦想从未实现，或许他们的孩子可以帮忙实现这一点。就像我说的，成功的体育运动员可以获得极大的回报。如果你是少数幸运者，或者说有天赋的成功者之一，那你就会进入一个充满难以置信的机会、财富、成功和名声等等的世界。
所以如果你热爱足球，想要成为职业足球运动员的话，其实你是可以去加入职业俱乐部。其实我还想问，如果你有某些其他运动的这种天赋的话，想成为从事其他运动的职业运动员，还能获得国家或者是其他组织的这种支持吗？
你说的是精英水平的体育运动。精英水平的体育运动总是能够获得支持，但与此同时，地方基础设施同样重要，因为大多数体育项目都是在地方层面上存在并发展起来的，包括当地的教练，那些放弃自我时间，在周六早上下班后或者放学后陪着孩子一起训练的老师、父母等等，正是他们让整个系统得以运转起来。然后那些足够优秀或幸运被发现的孩子就会进入相关的专业培训机构。中国有点不一样，据我所知，中国有很多类似的课外辅导的东西。如果一个有运动天赋的孩子被发现，即便人们不清楚这个孩子在哪项运动上最有天赋，这个孩子也会在很小的时候就被吸纳进某个地方级别的体育运动培养项目。其实几年前我去了解过辽宁的沈阳体育大学，那里也是中国奥运项目的培养中心之一。在那里到处走一走，就能感到很多充满运动精神的景象。年轻的男孩和女孩都在跑步、跳跃、踢球，这是件好事。所以在这些地方基础设施之上，还有职业体育基础设施，比如足球俱乐部和橄榄球俱乐部等基础设施。职业体育有着截然不同的教练和设施。到了最顶尖的精英水平，还有英国运动会这样的组织，他们的工作是培养具有全球竞争力的运动员，确保英国继续在奥运会等国际比赛中获奖。他们通过关注运动员的表现，确保资金用于支持那些更有胜算的运动项目中来。那些获得奥运金牌的英国运动员，我认为他们很有可能加入精英体育计划。如果是拳击手，他们就会加入精英拳击计划；如果是田径运动员，他们就会加入精英田径计划。无论他们参加的是哪种体育项目，他们都会成为精英体育计划的一员。他们能够获得的资金支持，最终将由他们赢得的奖牌数量所决定。如果他们参加了多次奥运会却没有拿到金牌，那么一部分资金就会被缩减，投入到其他他们认为英国更有机会赢得奖牌的体育运动项目上。所以说这是相当残酷的。如果你被精英体育计划吸纳，那是一件好事。要是你不再是为了乐趣而去从事一项运动，你的运动生涯就会变得有所不同，变得更加困难。要知道，运动员在加入所有这些精英计划之前，在所有金钱涌向运动员之前，运动员只能是依靠自己，你必须自己照顾好自己，必须能找到帮助你的赞助商。网飞上有一部很棒的纪录片是关于 Daley Thompson 的。你知道 Daley Thompson 是谁吗？他是一位全能运动员，在1980年和1984年奥运会上获得了金牌。他说自己是世界上最伟大的运动员，因为10项全能有10个比赛项目，对吧？你看过的。这部纪录片讲述了他赢得奥运会奖牌的经历。他曾经睡在沙发上，由当地企业为他提供食物和饮料，他不得不靠别人的慷慨来养活自己，这样他才能向所有人展示他的天赋。脱离这些精英计划之后，你会发现自己的生活会回到只有自己一个人可依靠的状态。有很多人经历过这些，这对他们来说并不容易。那些在职业足球俱乐部里获得一席之地的孩子是一样的，等他们到了17或18岁时，可能不会得到一份职业合同，这真是一件艰难的事情。所以现在的体育运动，我是说有专业精神、回报、期望的体育运动，有些人没能成功，没有那种与众不同的天赋。少数成功的人和很多失败的人之间隔着一道天堑，他们之间的差距太大了，这真的很难，真的很艰难。
所以总结来说，就是取决于他们的运动表现。
精英水平的体育运动是这样的，最重要的就是运动表现。基本上，如果你表现不佳，他们就会把钱用于资助别人。
对，他现在是奥运奖牌得主，2届奥运奖牌得主，对吧？
他说他经历过最困难的事情就是赢得奥运会金牌，并在赢得奥运会金牌的同时打破世界纪录。1984年他在莫斯科就是在夺得金牌的同时打破了世界纪录。后来1984年洛杉矶奥运会上，他是不是又一次打破了世界纪录我不太确定。他是最伟大的英国运动员之一，我想也可能是有史以来最伟大的。
没错，他参加了世界田联的一个播客的录制，应该是叫 Inside the Track。
是吗？
就是在今年的巴黎奥运会上。
那我还不知道呢。不过那很好，这是件好事，大家喜欢这样的人。他是精英运动员，他取得了那么大的成就，他可以通过分享他的故事来激励其他人。要是没有平台可以让精英运动员去激励别人，那可就太可惜了。
所以他现在是非常有名的运动员了。
好吧，很幸运不是吗？我还小的时候11、12岁的时候，他就是英国最有名的人之一，也许当时他就是全世界最有名的人之一了，因为那段时间他还是参加奥运会的，2届奥运会的冠军，没有多少人能够拿到2届奥运会的冠军，真的很厉害。
没错没错，他在奥运会期间是很有名的，我很喜欢他的幽默感。
他有时候也会惹上麻烦，因为他的幽默太无拘无束了，我对此深表同情，但是他真的是一个了不起的人。
没错没错，我记得他说过，之前他去看一场篮球比赛，应该是法国对另外一个国家的比赛吧。他当时说的是，我虽然是一个爱国者，但如果你现在给我一件蓝色的衬衫，我也会接受，因为蓝色代表法国嘛。
确实是他会说的话。我认为他是那种几乎可以胜任任何运动的人，他天生就有这种能力。我认为他是个优秀的足球运动员，他本来可以踢足球的，他的足球水平也许没有到顶级，但他本可以舒舒服服的去踢低级别的联赛。要是你给他一根球棒，他只要5分钟就能知道怎么打，而且他是本能的知道应该怎么打。我想有些人确实有这样的能力，但没有多少人有这样的能力。
所以他是10项全能运动员，所以他什么运动都能参加。
是啊，他什么运动都很拿手。我想他最初是短跑运动员，后来教练意识到他不仅可以参加短跑，他也可以参加任何的运动项目。人们称他为世界上最伟大的运动员，正是因为他不仅仅参加了1个运动项目，他参加了10个运动项目呢。
是的，真的很厉害。我们刚刚也聊到了英超联赛，英超在世界各地都有很多很多的球迷。我在跟我朋友聊天的时候，他告诉我，他说当地球迷其实认为我们这些海外球迷对英超的参与程度并不多，我们对于英超的热爱和本地人是不太相同的。我们不知道球员是怎么在俱乐部成长的，我们也不知道球员和俱乐部之间发生的各种故事，我们只是在电视上看比赛而已。所以他们认为我们不是真的喜欢这些英超的俱乐部，我们其实只是看电视。对于这种说法，您怎么看呢？
我觉得这只是2种不同的关系，对吧？如果你在利兹长大，那么你会在成长的过程中自然而然地了解到利兹联俱乐部的历史和那些为俱乐部效力的著名球员。但这并不意味着5000英里之外的人关注利兹联、曼城或者利物浦或者其他俱乐部时，他们对这些俱乐部的感情就和土生土长的当地人有所不同。他们在这些俱乐部和俱乐部的成功上投入的时间和金钱都是一样的，对吧？我不认为海外球迷和当地球迷对球队的感情有什么不一样。我可以给你举一个例子。上个赛季结束之后，我去看了利兹联和南安普敦的季后赛。这场比赛将决定利兹联是否能够重返英超，还是只能再打1年英冠。我和一个丹麦人一起看了他的比赛，他和我一样为利兹联没有能够重返英超而难过。他和我一样了解俱乐部的历史，也和我一样经历过那些失望和偶尔欢乐的时光。他的感受和我并无不同。我们出生在不同的地方，我们和俱乐部的关系有点不一样，但我们的感受，我们体会到的那种爱、挫折和痴迷是完全一样的。所以我不会像有些球迷那样对俱乐部的海外支持者嗤之以鼻。如果有人喜欢利兹联，我会拥抱他的。我很欢迎大家支持利兹联，应该人人都爱利兹联。如果有人对某个俱乐部投入了感情，如果你花时间去想俱乐部的事，了解他的历史，所有为他效力过的球员，以及他赢过和输过的所有比赛等等，如果你还在上面花了钱，那么你就是真正的球迷。不管你是不是有幸来英国看比赛，你已经看过了对吧？你可以去看你主队的阿森纳的比赛。我想你们的听众也知道你们是阿森纳球迷吧？可能之前你提到过，到英国来看一场比赛，那可是一笔不小的投资，对吧？你作为一名海外球员和我这样的本地球迷对球队的投资并无不同，正是你我的投入让我们的球队得以在竞争激烈的现代足球世界保持足够的竞争力。如果没有你和我，他们就更难出头。如果没有球迷去关心球队、热爱球队，虽然球迷也经常因为主队而生气，如果没有这些球迷的话，足球就不再是那项我们所热爱的运动了，它就不一样了，它就会变成另外一种不同的东西，给人另一种不同的感受。当然，俱乐部和所在城市之间的关系很重要，很关键，你是知道的。我来自利兹，我知道利兹联对这座城市有多重要。但就像我说的，喜欢上某支精英球队以后，球迷所感受到的爱和痛苦是放之四海而皆准的。不管你是来自利兹、重庆、北京、塞拉利昂的自由城，还是北极，这种感觉都是一样的。情感是不能伪装的。你支持的队伍输了或者赢了，你所体会到的那种感情是不能伪装的。 无论你是谁，无论你在哪里，这份真挚的感情都是一样的。
是的，是的，我同意。其实我们也一同跟俱乐部经历了那些起起落落，一起经历所有发生的事情，也一起经历了所有的快乐跟悲伤。
确实是，不过对我来说，落多过起，悲伤多过快乐。还好，新的赛季又要开始了，我们不知道未来会怎么样，什么都有可能发生。现实开始轻拍你的肩膀，提醒你，也许这个赛季你不会赢得联赛冠军，也许会呢。
是的，我们会。
是100%还是120%的胜算呢？我认为这正是体育运动普遍受到大家喜爱的原因。我作为一个在利兹出生长大的人，对于利兹联的热爱和在丹麦出生长大的男生，在北京出生长大的女生对他们的主队热爱是一样的。这正是体育运动普及的原因，这就是为什么体育运动如此具有影响力，这就是为什么我们都喜欢体育运动，对吧？
没错，其实我还有一个问题，比如说国家队，我们的提纲里是没有这个问题的啊，我不知道能不能问，就是想知道您对前英格兰主帅索斯盖特的看法，因为索斯盖特下课了嘛。
我认为作为英格兰的主教练，他做的其实还是很不错的。他让球队与国家重新建立了联系，他表现得非常出色，是一个非常能言善辩的发言人。对于英格兰足球和英格兰这个国家而言都是如此。他展现了很多我们的闪光点，但从球队球迷的角度来看，他可能有点令人沮丧。我觉得他相当的谨慎，他取得的成就比我想象的要好。现代英国足球教练，甚至任何足球教练，哪怕算上最著名的曾经带队夺过世界杯冠军的教练，很少有教练能像索斯盖特那样，在过去3-4届国际赛事里能带领球队2度成功的杀入决赛。英格兰球迷已经几十年没有见过英格兰队能走得这么远了，但是英格兰球迷从不满足，任何成绩都没办法满足我们的英格兰球迷。我想这是因为他们觉得咱们英格兰队还有潜力，我们的球员有天赋，可以做到更多。从某种程度上来说，索斯盖特似乎就是无法冲到终点线。作为一名主教练，他天生谨慎，总是试图掌控比赛并捍卫领先优势，所以最后我们只输了一点点。我认为每个人都应该为他所取得的成就而感激他。我不知道他接下来会做什么，但我想每个英格兰球迷都应该祝福他取得成功。我想最后球迷开始有点期待球队能夺冠了，他们觉得索斯盖特作为主教练有点过于谨慎了，他没能发挥出球队的全部实力。毕竟在球迷看来，我们离夺冠只差了一点点。不管这是不是球迷的想法，还是说索斯盖特已经让那些球员发挥出了他们最佳水平，我想时间会证明一切。这也取决于他们接下来准备请谁做主教练。现在他们请了一位临时的主教练，他是英格兰 U21 国家足球队的主教练，也许他们稍晚一点会决定请谁来做真正的主教练。毕竟足球界一切都在变化，你永远不知道谁能胜任这份工作。
那其实想知道您心目当中比较合适的主帅人选有谁？
好吧，我的想法可能你的听众听了之后有些惊讶，我不知道。但我想我并不是唯一一个这样的人，我其实更关心我的俱乐部球队，而不是英格兰国家队。事实上，部分是因为我妈妈是苏格兰人，我也是苏格兰国家队的忠实球迷。我想大部分球迷对自己俱乐部主队的投入都比国家队投入得多。如果你问他们，你是更希望你的主队赢得英超奖杯，还是英格兰赢得欧洲杯冠军？我想大多数人都会说希望自己的俱乐部赢得英超。当然，也许我的想法是错的。至于谁是世界上最优秀的主教练，哪些主教练已经证明了他们可以把球队带出优秀的成绩，比如克洛普、瓜迪奥拉吧。我知道瓜迪奥拉与曼城的合同本赛季结束就要到期了，要是克洛普认为他已经休息够了，想重新回到足球界，或者瓜迪奥拉认为他自己在曼城的使命已经结束了，想迎接新的挑战，那么克洛普和瓜迪奥拉会是不错的英格兰主帅人选。我可不认为英格兰国家队的主教练必须是英格兰人，我觉得要找到最好的人，不管那个人是谁。是啊，我不知道他们最后到底会选谁，要是我的话，我可能会选瓜迪奥拉吧。
他的确是一个非常好的教练。
是啊，他看来是一个很不错的教练，而且这是一个很公正的评价。
那我们再来聊聊在英国的其他重大的比赛吧，比如说 F1，因为英国有银石赛道。
是的，又是一项发源于英国的运动。第一场现代 F1 比赛是1951年在银石赛道举办的，即便如今在 F1 的10支车队中有7支在英国设有基地，而且其中很多都集中在银石地区。F1 是一项结合了精密工程和人类能力的惊人赛事。F1 的参赛对象是由机器和拥有不可思议的反应能力、运动能力和判断力的人类构成的。我想 F1 大奖赛那3天的周末可能是英国一年中吸引游客最多的体育赛事，3天里有超过20万人前来观看 F1 也非常受电视观众的欢迎。现在这项赛事又回到了中国，这是件好事。中国有自己的 F1 车手周冠宇，我们在工作时在大使馆见过，他是一个很好的人。我不是那种特别精通汽车的人，我不太了解汽车和发动机等等那些细节，但我确实喜欢看 F1， 而且我更喜欢看那些竞争激烈的场次。要是哪位车手占据了绝对的领先地位，就像过去几年那样，那赛事就没那么好看了，对吧？如果竞争很激烈，车手之间的差距很小，你就能看到那种超越对手所需要的勇气、判断力和能力，非常的激动人心。我喜欢这样的比赛。我觉得你很幸运，不仅去球场看过英超联赛，看过你心爱的主队踢球，而且还去温布尔顿中心球场看过比赛。我认为现场亲眼看到这些赛事是一件很特别的事情，因为你可以感受这些赛事背后的历史和与之相关的一切，你会感觉自己融入了这一伟大的传统，这项传统可能追溯到几十年甚至几百年前，并且未来还有希望继续传承下去。这很棒，如果有人有机会到线下看比赛，我一定会鼓励他们来英国体验一下。显然这很贵，而且很难买到票，我知道。但我想你可能会同意我的看法，如果你有机会亲临现场，如果你有这方面的资源，那么这是值得的，因为这种体验是独一无二的。我有幸在英国看了一些大型体育赛事，我在罗德板球场、椭圆体育场看过国际板球锦标赛，也在印度看过板球比赛，简直太狂热了，很狂热，真的很棒。我也清楚地记得我小时候第一次去看足球比赛，尤其是晚上的比赛，走上楼梯的时候，你可以看到球场在泛光灯的照射下徐徐出现在你的眼前，那是一个令人难以置信的戏剧化的时刻。只要你看过，那份记忆就会永远地停留在你的心中。我去北京看国安的比赛时也产生过同样的感觉，当你踏进足球场，走上台阶，你就会看到那个泛着绿色光芒的球场，你会产生同样的感觉和兴奋之情，期待着即将出现在你眼前的画面。每个人都能体会到这种感觉，在这些具有历史意义的场馆看比赛，会为比赛增加一些特别的意义。所以如果你有机会去英国看英超联赛或者任何足球联赛，或者去特维克纳姆体育场或者莫里菲尔德球场看橄榄球比赛，或者去银石赛道看 F1 赛车，或者去温布尔顿看网球，那你就去吧，那是一种很棒的体验，千载难逢。或者如果你有钱的话，一辈子可以去好几次，但这是一种非常了不起的体验，它会让你很难忘。
是的，事实上我觉得如果你没有机会看这些比赛，你也可以去这些球场或者是体育场参观，这些地方有非常非常好的导游，他们会带你进入这些场馆，告诉你关于场馆的故事以及他们所知道的球员的故事，是非常有意思的一件事儿，是非常棒的一个体验。
很棒，即便这些体育场馆空无一人的时候，里面也游荡着各位曾在这里打过或者踢过的伟大的运动员的幽灵。对，如果你请一位好的导游，你可能会体会到这些所有的历史，所有的伟大球员和伟大的比赛都曾出现在这个空间里，会有一种感觉在你心中油然而生。所以如果有机会去那些体育场馆看一看，绝对是值得的。
是的，比如说我去过老特拉福德参观。
我的合同里规定了我们不能讨论曼彻斯特，我想我们已经确认过了这一点。
比如我们去老特拉福德参观的时候，导游就让我们列队站在球员通道那边，然后放起音乐，我们就像球员一样走进空空的球场，真的有一种参加比赛的感觉。
听着我完全理解，我完全理解那种氛围，让我们觉得自己好像又回到了8岁的时候，对吧？我们就好像又体会到了那种曾经的激动，哪怕不情愿，我也必须承认，我可以想象你在老特拉福德球场时或许有类似的体会。那些不了解利兹联和曼联之间恩怨情仇的人，可能以为利兹联和曼联关系不错，但我想你会原谅我的。如果有曼联球迷在听这个播客，他们也会原谅我没法表现出更多的热情。
你们可以不必当你死我活的敌人，也可以是好朋友嘛。
可能说亦敌亦友更合适吧。我是说，如果没有曼联，我们可能踢得会更早。每个人都需要自己的头号敌人，不是吗？过去的几年，我们朝着各自不同的方向发展，但彼此做竞争对手，仍然是一件很好的事情。有竞争对手很好，即便你不能以自己的成功为乐，那你至少能够取笑敌人的失败。所以我也要谢谢曼联过去几年，至少给了我这样的机会。这个赛季也请给我们多一些取笑的机会吧，谢谢了。
我也不知道该说什么好了。万一他们下赛季成为联赛冠军呢？
如果这样，我可能要去移民到火星或者其他别的地方了。我尊重你的设想。
我相信利兹会重回英超联赛的，对吧？
会的。我不知道这一天是什么时候才能来临，但总有一天我们会回到英超的。这正好是所有体育爱好者的另一个共同点，他们都生活在希望之中，不是吗？每个新年或者说每个新赛季的开始的时候，哪怕球队过去的成绩不尽如人意，球迷们仍然抱着巨大的期望，因为大多数球队大部分赛季最终都是相对失败的，只有一支球队能够赢得联赛冠军，只有4支球队可以进入4强，只有6支英超球队有资格参加欧冠，只有1支球队能够捧回欧冠奖杯。任何一个赛季，大多数俱乐部和他们的球迷都会经历相对的失败，但我们可以忍受这些失败，因为那些难得的成功时刻是如此的不可思议，如此精彩，如此的令人难以忘怀。我们可以为了那些鼓舞人心的时刻，那些辉煌的时刻，忍受所有的失望。在那些时刻，你会沉浸到这种共同的情绪中去。比如当利兹联在最后1分钟踢进了球，赢得了比赛时，不仅像我这样来自利兹的球迷，来自北京、丹麦以及全球各地同样关心利兹联的球迷都会疯狂起来。就像我说的，我们怀揣着同样的情感。
你看，就像我说的，我们其实是怀揣着同样的情感的来看这些比赛的。
没错，我认为这是共通的，这就是为什么体育很伟大，你们的播客也很伟大。在我看来，体育用一种普世的方式把全世界的人民联系到了一起。我在非洲、南亚、中国等不同的地方工作过，我发现体育是一种开启对话的方式。你会遇到各式各样的人，你可能会认为自己和他们没有什么共同点，但是你可以在体育运动上找到和他们的相同点。
所以其实我觉得体育是一种全世界通用的语言。
是的，但这个语言也可能是脏话，对吧？但也是一种全球通用的语言。
可能我们在这方面没那么擅长了。
还好啦。
但是我们都很喜欢这种从运动中获得的乐趣。我也非常喜欢在英国看这些体育比赛，我觉得是非常棒的体验。
我们很幸运有你们这样的人，你们发现英国是一个充满激情、欢乐、情感和兴奋的地方，而且你们愿意花精力来英国体验体育运动。我希望更多的人能够这样做。我觉得你比我更擅长引导其他人。亲临现场体验体育运动是一件很棒的事情，它可以丰富人们的生活，给人们带来永生难忘的回忆。敬你，敬那些像你一样的人。
那如果让您从这些在英国举办的国际赛事里边挑选一场，推荐我们去观看，那您会建议我们去选哪一场呢？
哪一场赛事？哎呀，这可太难选了。有范围吗？比如说哪项体育运动？比如说我喜欢足球，足球是我最喜欢的运动。那我会建议你有机会去看一场英超联赛或者苏格兰顶级联赛里的德比大战。我觉得那比国际比赛要更好看，因为相对国际比赛，联赛更能让你体会到英国足球那种部落主义。要是下次曼联或者利物浦来造访利兹联的话，你可以买票。如果你过来的话，你就会学到很多的新语言，那会是一场让你难忘的经历。而且现在英国有很多世界一流的体育场馆，你已经去过酋长球场了，热刺也有一座很棒的球场，利物浦把他们的场馆改造成了英国最好的体育场馆之一。如果你去苏格兰，你可以看到格拉斯哥凯尔特人这样的比赛，他们的场馆也很棒，而且可以看到格拉斯哥德比大战，也就是凯尔特人和格拉斯哥的比赛。你有可能在那里学到更多的有趣的新语言。如果是我会选择足球，但我认为英国体育的伟大之处在于每个人都能找到自己喜欢的比赛。如果你喜欢网球，那你可以去温布尔顿；如果你喜欢橄榄球，那不妨去英格兰的维德克纳姆体育场，或者苏格兰的莫里菲尔德球场，或者加利夫的千禧球场，看一场欧洲6国的橄榄球赛。如果你喜欢 F1 赛车，那就去银石看车队大奖赛。如果你喜欢赛马，可以去看切尔滕纳姆金杯赛、英国国家障碍赛马大赛或者英国皇家赛马会。 如果你喜欢帆船，那有亨利皇家帆船赛，你也可以来看牛津剑桥的赛艇对抗赛，和一群朋友站在河的桥上，看着选手们划着赛艇通过，每个人都能找到适合自己的赛事。我不想其他人盲目的跟随我的喜好，有各种各样的赛事，大家可以根据自己的喜好挑选。
那如果你喜欢跑步这个项目，那你可以去看什么呢？
如果你喜欢跑步的话，英国也有黄金联赛这样的比赛。奥林匹克体育场原本就是为2012年奥运会建造的，但它是一个永久性的场馆。足球赛季期间，它被用作西汉姆的主场，同时它也有各种的赛事，包括田径赛事。近年来，英国举办了许多大型的国际赛事。去年夏天，格拉斯哥举办了自行车世锦赛，英国参与主办了2020年的欧洲杯。我们总是在竞争举办这些大型国际体育赛事的权利，包括田径比赛。可以说，大型赛事就像伦敦的公交车一样，只要你等得够久，总会能等到你要的那一辆，你也会等到你喜欢的那场赛事。
所以无论你喜欢什么样的项目，你都可以在这边找到你想看的东西。
是的，每个人都能找到自己喜欢的赛事。
哦，真的特别酷！我现在其实就想赶紧回到伦敦。
太棒了！阿森纳在新赛季的首场是对谁来着？狼队。狼队的老板是中国复兴集团。对，狼队的老板是中国复兴集团，所以我认为狼队上个赛季踢得很好，但你肯定对阿森纳这个赛季的表现抱有更高的期望。你怎么想呢？你觉得阿森纳今年能夺走曼城的冠军吗？还是说阿森纳今年踢一场完美的比赛你就满足了？
我相信阿森纳今年能夺冠。
没错，这才是球迷应该有的回答，不是吗？你应该相信自己的主队能够夺冠。如果你现在都不信，那么还有什么时候能够信呢？上个赛季我们排名第2，是的，我想这个赛季我们可以夺冠。那等我们5月份回来的时候，你们可以告诉我你们的期望有没有实现。
我觉得我们能夺冠，但是我们可能需要更多的球员。
很好，我希望你们的期望能够实现，我祝愿你的期望能够实现。作为一个利兹联的球迷，我真的没有那么讨厌阿森纳，我不会因为阿森纳进了联赛而利兹没有就讨厌阿森纳，我没有那个想法。
我们夺冠就意味着曼联没有夺冠。
的确，你这么一说，我感觉好多了。不过我觉得曼联今年真的有机会夺取冠军。你永远不知道未来会怎么样。
是的，但是曼城
他们是夺冠热门，对吧？虽然他们已经卖掉了一些人，但他们似乎还有一些非常有天赋的年轻球员。他们是唯一一支连续4年赢得英超联赛冠军的球队。这个赛季他们会努力继续打破纪录，成为第一支英超5连冠的球队。我之前在谈 F1 的时候就说过，如果总是同一批人赢得比赛的话，会很无聊的。我希望情况会发生变化。如果说我支持曼城再次夺冠，那就太虚伪了。我不喜欢曼城总拿冠军。如果今年阿森纳能够打破曼城的连胜，我不会为曼城感到难过的。我觉得很好。
太棒了，我们非常期待能够看到阿森纳夺冠。
奖杯在向阿森纳招手，祝你们好运。
谢谢，不过联赛还没有开始。
这是件好事，对吧？因为现在一切皆有可能。是的，一切皆有可能。阿森纳可能是下一个无敌之师呢。
希望可以这样。
一切皆有可能。
好的，谢谢。那我们今天的访谈就到这里吧。
Well, thank you for inviting me, and thank you for listening to all the things I had to say.
I love all those stories.
Yeah, well, I hope there'll be enough in there for you to make something that you think people will want to listen to.
Yeah, I think
great.
Yeah,
thank you.
Thank you, Dom.
那接下来的部分呢，我们就把当时录制的生肉发出来，希望大家可以从英文原声中与我们一起听到我们讲英国体育的故事。
对，大家好，我是申东明，我是英国大使馆新闻参赞。So I'm Dom Stanton, and I'm the Communications Counsellor at the British Embassy here in Beijing.
那么在Dom简短的自我介绍之后，我们聊了聊到门时的启蒙体育运动。板球在他的生活中占据了很大的部分。随着话题的推进，我们也对英国的青少年体育教育颇为感兴趣。英国的学校体育和我们的有哪些差异呢？Dom也帮我们解答了这个问题。
So I was born in Leeds, which is a big city in the north of England in Yorkshire, and sport is incredibly important in Yorkshire, a really big part of the local identity, I think. Leeds is, I think, the biggest city in the UK that is a kind of one football club city. It's only got Leeds United. It's not like two Manchester clubs or two clubs in Liverpool or a whole load of clubs in London fighting for support. It's a one club city, yeah. And it's also really historically the real kind of heartland of cricket, which is another one of the UK's kind of big national sports that became a kind of big global sport as well. And it was the case up until quite recently, only like 30 or so years ago, that in order to qualify to play cricket for Yorkshire, you had to have been born in Yorkshire. So there were all these fathers who would drag their pregnant wives back to Yorkshire so that their son could be born in the county so that he could qualify when he grew up to play cricket for Yorkshire. And when I got older and I went to secondary school, I went to school in a place called Featherstone, which is quite a small town in Yorkshire, but it's the thing that Featherstone was kind of very, in sport anyway, known for was it had a rugby league club. And that part of Yorkshire where I came from was part of the kind of band across the north of England where rugby league is the kind of dominant type of rugby that's played. So I grew up surrounded by sport. My dad was a cricketer he was a good cricketer. His brothers also all played sport. They all were sports fans. And I grew up surrounded by sport really from the time I was very young. Kind of some of my earliest memories are of either watching other people play sport or playing it myself, you know? So I kind of, sport's been part of my life for as long as I can remember. Yeah, cricket, football, a load of other things besides. So my dad used to run, he was a teacher and he used to run the school team. So even before, for his school, so even before I was old enough to kind of really play seriously myself, he would kind of drag us out on a Saturday morning to basically babysit us while he coached his team play. And I would play cricket on the street and we'd constantly be kind of having to go and knock on neighbours' doors to ask if we could have our ball back from the garden because someone had hit it into a garden, or ask for the football back because someone had kicked it into the garden. We lived in a terraced street, but it was a cul-de-sac. It kind of at the end of the road there was quite a big space where cars could come in and turn around, but where there weren't cars, you could set up a kind of. There was actually, at the top of it, there's a whole lot of garages where people would park their cars. And so the garages became the goalposts for our football matches, and the pillars in between became the wickets for our cricket matches, and the gates to people's driveways became the nets for our tennis games. So like our neighbours, I'm sure, hated me and my brother and our friends in the street because we were always doing something, playing some kind of sport, any kind of time that we got. And it was the same really at school. I remember when I think back about being at school, I don't remember much about the classroom, really. I remembered like most of the kids in the classroom were just waiting for the clock to kind of tick around and the bell to go for the end of class. And they would rush out to kind of play football or play cricket or whatever. Like sport was much more important, or felt much more important than the kind of academic stuff. And I was thinking as an outsider in China, it feels like quite a tough place to be a kid, right? Because there's so much pressure even from a very young age to be academically kind of successful. I think that's really sad to me, actually, because I don't know how, unfortunately for me, as you can see, but your listeners maybe can't. It's quite a long time ago that I was at school, right? But we used to play sport just for the joy of it, right? For us, playing sport was a joy. It was a release. It was where we had fun, right? And it was an escape from the classroom, but it was also what we did for fun. And I think that's really important. It's important for kids to have fun. It can't all just be about attainment and about meeting the expectations of, your teachers or your parents. There's got to be something in there that you can just do just for the joy of it, just for the enjoyment of it, just to do just because it's fun to do, right? And I know that I see a lot of, Chinese colleagues and friends who've got kids, and they do lots of extracurricular things. Like they're always on the weekend going out for this class or that class, but it's often like a dance class or a music class or some other kind of thing that again is sort of feels a bit more about attainment and about achieving certain goals or certain levels or reaching certain standards. It doesn't, at least not from the outside, it doesn't seem like it's doing things just for the fun of doing it. When I go to visit a park or something and I see a mother playing badminton with her daughter or something like that, it always makes me smile. It always makes me happy. Partly, I guess, because it reminds me of my childhood, but because it's just a good thing to see. I think it's a really good thing to see. And in the UK, I mean, you asked me about how sport is part of the sort of school curriculum in the UK. There is a national curriculum in the UK, which means there's basically a set of standard things that every school is expected to teach children at different age levels and different groups. And sport is absolutely an integral part of that, because I think people understand the importance that it has, both in terms of giving kids and all their energy a kind of outlet for all that sort of physical energy that they've got, but also because, and I think this might be something we come onto or come back to later, they recognise that sport's got a really important role to play in forming character, in teaching kids important lessons about life that will shape them and go on to kind of influence the kind of people that they turn out to be, teach them important things about winning and losing and being part of a team and trying your best and how to deal with success, but also how to deal with kind of setbacks and failure. All these things are really important to kind of forming your character and helping you kind of learn that the world doesn't just revolve around you. You're part of a kind of bigger world where you have to work with other people if you're going to achieve things and be successful and so on. So I think that's a really important aspect of it. So there's always, of course, academic achievement is important in the UK too. And there's lots of stuff that the UK could learn from the Chinese system about attainment in certain academic subjects like maths or whatever. But I think that, there's a recognition that's sort of written into the national curriculum in the UK about how important sport is. And I think it's important when you're a kid, when you're kind of growing into the person that you're going to be. But it remains important your whole life because of, what it gives you in terms of your social life, how it supports your physical health and well-being, but also its importance for your kind of mental health and well-being as well.
接下来我们又聊了聊刚刚过去的奥运会，英国代表团和中国代表团都取得了不错的成绩，那成绩背后又有哪些有趣的故事，我们也简单的回顾了下。
The Olympics was great, right? I mean, I don't know about you, but I was glued to the Olympics and I really loved it. I thought it was great. And the UK was, again, very successful in terms of the number of medals it won. It won, I think, more medals than it won at the last games. Not as many gold medals this time, which was a bit disappointing. And China also did really well in the end in terms of, I think, the same number of gold medals as the US, but fewer medals overall, but the same number of gold medals. So competing right at the top of the medal table as in the recent games. So that, I mean, great. And you could see how individual sports people emerged as real kind of stars of the games, like the Chinese weightlifter. Who, when she won her gold medal, she took her coach up onto the podium and weightlifted him. I mean, that was great, and the whole games was full of those great individual stories. Oh yeah, there were a few of those proposals, weren't there? It was one of the Chinese swimmers, I think. Badminton player. Ah, okay, all right, yeah. And fortunately, they said yes, right? So. I might live to regret that decision, but no, it was good to see. It was very kind of romantic moment in front of the whole world. So yeah, I think we all like that moment, right? Because I mean, sport really is all about emotion, isn't it? It's kind of emotion in motion. It's kind of all the stories that emerge from sport are filled with emotion. So it's maybe it's not unusual that, you know, at the end of something like that, the obvious next step is to kind of go down on one knee and propose to your fiance. Maybe I'm surprised it doesn't happen more often.
然后我们从奥沙利文的自传聊起，体育是如何在英国社区内渗透的。从更高层面上来看，鼓励人们运动的实际办法都有什么？比如说，如何开启一场5公里跑步。之前我们也聊到过 parkrun， 实际上还有一些更基础的举措，让大家都动起来。一起来听 Dom 讲一讲。
Yeah, I mean, like Ronnie O'Sullivan, a genius snooker player. But I think I mentioned earlier that the importance of sport to mental health, and I think he's a great example of somebody for whom sport, not snooker, which he's just a kind of born genius at, but doing sport, going running has been incredibly important to kind of managing his mental health. He's struggled with his mental health off and on for a number of years, and I think for him, running became a really important way of keeping control of his kind of mental well-being, or keeping some control of his mental well-being. And yeah, I think there have always been athletics clubs in the UK where teachers or coaches have kind of spotted kids with talent and kind of directed them towards those clubs, and they've become like the feeder system for people who go on to represent the UK or represent England or Scotland or Wales, Northern Ireland, whatever, in athletics. I think what's new in the last few years is the kind of growth in the kind of casual runners. One of the most popular apps in the UK now is this thing that was developed, I think, by our National Health Service called Couch to 5K. 5K. Yeah, and it's a program for people who've never been physically active really before, who aren't runners. It gives them a program where they can go from never having done a run in their life over a structured 9-week program to running 5K in around 30 minutes. Well, you have an online coach, so it can be, you've got this voice in your head while you're doing the running. And it's been kind of people like the American gold medal winning runner Michael Johnson might be your coach, or it might be the British gold medal winning heptathlete Denise Lewis. She might be your coach, or it could be a celebrity. They might be your coach, and you've got their voice in your ear telling you, okay, now you can slow down, or if you're feeling good, you can speed up a bit, but kind of don't overdo it. So that has been massively influential in terms of bringing people who've never got off the couch before out into parks and onto the streets to do runs. And I think you've seen the emergence or the growth in these, like what they call park runs, where hundreds of people on a Saturday morning will go down to Battersea Park in London, or, you know, Otley Park or Roundhay Park in Leeds, or, you know, wherever, and run as a group. And that's great for their physical fitness, and it's great also as a social thing. They're meeting a whole load of new friends. They're being much more physically active. And that's kind of, it delivers a whole load of benefits to their physical mental health, but also to their social life as well. So I think that's something that's changed, and that's something that I think lots of people have benefited from. And actually lots of them, a bit like Ronnie O'Sullivan, actually they've benefited, their mental health has benefited in terms of they feel less isolated, they feel part of a community of people who are like-minded, they feel a physical benefit. I mean, I don't know about you. I'm sure you, right? You look much fitter than I do. But I was playing five-a-side on Tuesday night, and I played okay. I didn't play great. But at the end of it, coming off, I was tired, but I felt that kind of elation, that kind of dopamine rush that you get from having kind of done some sport. You feel better for having done it, even if kind of 5 minutes before you started thinking, oh, I don't know, maybe tonight I'll give it a miss. Maybe I won't go for that run. I know I should, but maybe, you know, I'm a bit tired. I had a long day at work. But invariably, when you actually go and do it afterwards, you just feel better in yourself in a whole load of ways. You feel physically better, even if you're tired, but you feel mentally refreshed and mentally better as well. So I think it's been, Ronnie's a good example. And obviously, because he's such a kind of hero to so many people, right? And therefore he can inspire others. But I think for him, on just a personal level, just as a human being, even if he kind of wasn't perhaps the best snooker player there's ever been, it would still have been a great thing for him to discover running and what it could do for him. I know that in London, especially during the COVID lockdown in London, Kennington Park, which is the park nearest where my flat in London, became like really important. It became everybody's outdoor gym. And suddenly, because everybody then was allowed to go out and do some exercise kind of once a day, but it became a kind of real shared community facility. And you saw the importance that parks can play in society as a place where people can go and kind of get together and exercise and be outdoors and all that kind of stuff. But I never knew that Bushy Park was where it all began. Wow. Yeah. I'll have to go and check it out. Yeah. People in China use parks as a kind of community facility, right? People dancing, in the dusk, or hooking up a bit of string between two trees and playing badminton, or playing Jenza and kicking a kind of shuttle around. It already does that. And you see lots of people, if you go at lunchtime, near the embassy is Rutan Park. And if you go out at lunchtime, you see lots of people running a kind of circuit or circuits of the park. So I think it would be a natural fit, really, for China. I'm surprised it's not already. I might try and trademark it and become a billionaire by trademarking park running in China before anybody else does. Yeah. I see lots of people out in the morning. I mean, it's been quite hot this summer, right? But in the early morning before it gets too hot, and again like that, I see lots of people out running in the area around my apartment block. Yeah. Sometimes I'm one of them, but I try to do it very early or very late. So
那聊到这里，其实我比较好奇的部分是很多源于英国的运动。现阶段的英国似乎没有国际顶尖的运动员或者运动队。关于这个相当尖锐的问题，Dom又将给出什么样的答案呢？
I think once sports kind of establish themselves and they spread around the world, they kind of belong to everybody, right? They belong to everybody. So there's no guarantee that the UK, even if that's where that sport kind of in its modern form started, will forever after be the kind of greatest country in the world at that sport. And they all emerge in slightly different ways. So badminton, I think, began actually in British India, I should say. And of course, it's much more, I think, widely played in India now than perhaps in the UK, although it's still quite kind of widely played in the UK. But once you kind of put these sports out into the world, they kind of take on a life of their own, I think. And so, as I said, a lot of sports in their modern incarnation kind of emerged from the UK in the 19th century. Badminton in the kind of mid-19th century out of British India, where military officers were kind of developing this kind of new bat and ball game. And actually, when it started, it was kind of like Jenza. It was about keeping the shuttle up in the air for as long as you could. There wasn't a net, and there weren't, it wasn't about 2 players or 4 players playing over a net. It was just about keeping the thing up in the air. So it kind of evolved over time, and as it evolves and the rules change and it spreads around the world, different people take to it, and certain sports get very strongly adopted in particular countries, right? So table tennis is another, ping pong球, another great example. I mean, that also started in the UK in the 19th century. And it was very much a kind of game for the upper classes in the UK. It was a kind of indoor game. And instead of, when it was first played, it wasn't played with kind of bats and a ball. It was played, this will tell you something about the kind of people who played it. Instead of bats, they used cigar boxes, the empty boxes from cigars. And instead of a ball, they used champagne corks. So, cigars and champagne, that gives you some idea of who was playing this game. And then I guess as tennis, the kind of outdoor tennis became more popular, table tennis began to resemble a kind of miniature version of that a bit more. People started to manufacture special tables that were designed to play table tennis on. It used to be like people would just kind of arrange a row of books on a dinner table. And after dinner, all the ladies would go off into the drawing room and, talk about whatever they talked about. But the gentlemen would then get their cigars out and they'd use the empty cigar box and they'd be banging champagne corks across these kind of net made up of like books on the dinner table. Very kind of strange now to modern kind of imaginations, but at the time that was what passed for sort of normal behaviour among the British upper classes. Maybe it still does, I don't know. But so yeah, these sports kind of evolve and then they start to spread, and when they spread, some of them just find a home for whatever reason, cultural reasons or other reasons. They just find a home and they get adopted. And now obviously people just associate ping pong with China. They kind of see these things as like it's basically become a kind of Chinese sport in lots of people's minds, even though it started in like Edward, drawing rooms in Victorian Britain 100 and however many years ago, right? So things change, and the same thing with football, really. And like football, really, the rules of modern football were agreed at a pub in London, actually, in Covent Garden, called the Freemasons' Arms. In I think about 1860 or 1861, a bunch of guys got together and they were trying to resolve the disagreements about football, because you could, in some places where it was played, you could pick the ball up with your hands and you could run with it, and in other places you couldn't use your hands. And they all sat down together to try and resolve this kind of question about what are the kind of rules of this game. And like today, when a lot of men get together in a pub, they couldn't agree, right? So the sports kind of divided into two, and one became rugby, where you could pick up the ball and you could pass it with your hands and you could use your hands, and then the other became modern football, where you can't, unless you're the goalkeeper, use your hands. You have to kind of just kick the ball with your feet. But then once that sport kind of escapes into the rest of the world, it gets adopted by other countries and they make it theirs, right? So I think the first people to play football in South America were British workers that had gone over to work on the railways, building railways in South America in the kind of late 19th century. But now, of course, there's no crazier set of football fans in the world than there are in Latin America, maybe in parts of China, I don't know. But in like South America, and some of the greatest players, arguably the greatest players that have ever played football, have come from South America. So Messi, obviously, but Maradona before Messi, and Pelé before Maradona. So, these sports, they find their home wherever it might be around the world, and they get adopted by the people there, and for whatever reason, some countries emerge as kind of real kind of powerhouses in that sport. And for the UK, which is like, I guess, still relatively a small country in population terms, we can't be the best at everything. Can't be the best at everything.
Yeah.
And the UK also had some success in diving, and that was really good. But there were other sports where the UK did particularly well. So rowing was one, I think, out of our team, all but three of the athletes that were part of the rowing team came back with a medal, whether it was a gold or silver or bronze medal. The equestrian sports, the UK was very good at. Cycling. Basically, if it involves you sitting on something or in something, the UK did well at it. So make of that what you will. I don't know why. We're better at sports where you get to sit down. So there are sports where it seems that, and I guess this can, there are rhythms in sport like in life, and it may be that in like 20 years' time, another country will emerge as the sort of, the dominant nation.
Yeah. You got Keely on the 800 meters women.
Oh yeah, that was great. That was so satisfying, because again, I think we talked a bit earlier about the weight of expectation on kids actually, but I guess you can still feel that weight of expectation as an adult. And for her, Keely Hodgkinson, like there was so much expectation that she was going to win. Like everybody thought she was going to win, and the ability to manage to deal with that level of expectation and still perform at your best and be better than anybody else in the world. That's an amazing thing. But not just the physical kind of ability that you must need to do that, but the kind of mental strength you must have to perform with the whole world watching against that level of expectation. That's an amazing thing. So it was great. And there's some really good clips on social media of all the UK TV commentators who were kind of watching the race while it was going on, but were just like fans. You know, they were jumping up and down and screaming, oh, come on. And there were pictures from her hometown of like her family and friends all sitting together watching this, kind of willing her on. It was a great thing to see. And I'm sure it's the same thing in China, right? There'll be like all around China, there will have been families and friends gathered around the TV watching their sons or daughters or whatever, you know. A great thing.
And you got Alex,
Yeah, triathlete. And yeah, his win was quite dramatic, I think. He kind of, he wasn't he didn't dominate the race. It was only right at the end that he kind of came through to take the gold. And that was great. That was great.
He's a good runner. So.
Yeah, he is. Look, and I think it was in the last Olympics that he really emerged, because before him, there were a pair of brothers actually from Yorkshire, where I'm from, the Brownlee brothers. And they'd been the kind of leading kind of British triathletes for a number of years. And then Alex, he kind of emerged as the new kind of star on the scene. And so it was really good to see him take that gold medal. Yeah, it was great. It's always good to see another British gold medal, even if it's not from Yorkshire.
既然提到了职业运动员，那我们就来聊聊在英国成为职业运动员的通路都有哪些，是否会和中国一样能够获得国家层面的支持呢？但我们会从自己的经历出发，给我们讲述一个孩子如果想要成为职业运动员会有哪些选择。
Yeah, my mum taught me to play badminton. I remember that. I think she used to play badminton when she was younger, when she was a student and stuff. And I remember us going to the sports centre. She's from Scotland, so we went to the local sports centre up in a town called Falkirk, which is where she was born. And she taught me and my brother how to play badminton. And then I stopped playing. I didn't really play for a long time, like a really long time. But I was, a few years ago, I went to work in India, which I did for a couple of years. And I started playing again there. And I found I really enjoyed it. I mean, I wasn't great, but I could still remember enough to kind of not embarrass myself too much and not ruin the game for everybody else. And again, that became a really important part of my sort of social calendar. Every Thursday we'd get together as a group and we'd play badminton and we'd go for a beer afterwards. And it became something that I really look forward to every week. Just like here in Beijing, the five-a-side football that I play on a Tuesday is something that I look forward to every week. It's like a really important kind of part of the week for me. And table tennis, yeah, I think I started playing table tennis at school. I think table tennis is quite widely played in schools in the UK because you don't need that much equipment and space to play it, basically. And it's quite a simple kind of game. And that was a sport that I found that I had quite a sort of natural aptitude for. I got quite good at it quite quickly, and then I think teachers could see that I was getting quite good at it quite quickly. And again, around that, there's a whole then sort of infrastructure of places where you can go where there's proper kind of professional kind of coaching, and you can meet other kids that are kind of good, and you get to kind of work out what your level is. You know, you might be the best at table tennis in your class, and then you start playing against the kids from another class and you find out that actually you're not as good as you thought you were, or you start to play against other schools. So you kind of find your level when you kind of move up through this sort of system. And when I was 10 or 11 through to like 13, 14, I was quite good, and I was playing in national competitions and getting into the kind of on the edge of the kind of national level kind of ranking system, and won a few kind of cups and trophies. But I was never dedicated enough. The story of my life. I had a certain amount of talent, but I wasn't the most talented. Yeah. But there were lots of people who had much more kind of, I guess, discipline than I did, who just put in much more effort, right? They were prepared to work a lot harder. So after a while, after a few years, it became clear that I was never going to really become a kind of good enough to really be competitive at beyond a certain kind of level. And then by that age, obviously you're kind of a whole lot of other interests start to kind of become part of your life, whether it's music or art or, going out or whatever it is. So unless you're really dedicated, because, you've got that combination of the kind of talent and the will and desire and the discipline, lots of people, that's the age when they kind of drop out of not just sport, but other things that like were important to them when they were kids. They just get to a certain age and like other things just kind of get in the way and they kind of, they just like, they stop doing it. And I haven't really played table tennis beyond kind of maybe kind of hitting a ball on holiday, when there's a table since then, which is a shame. I sometimes wish I go back and kind of pick up a bat again and see if I can still know what to do with it. But but that was the kind of the sport, I guess, in which I was the most kind of, I developed the most, I was most involved in. It was the one that I was best at. It was the only one that I really became involved in, not just as a social thing, but as a competitive thing, where I'd be kind of going off traveling around the country to do it, and occasionally like I remember going off on a ferry to play in the Irish Open for like under 14-year-olds or something like that. But I like looking back on it, I've got nothing but sort of good memories of it, really. I kind of regret that I didn't try a bit harder, that I didn't work harder and kind of stick at it a bit longer to see if I could have got a bit further. But I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the people that I met. I enjoyed the sort of experiences that it gave me the chance to have. It was good. It was a good thing, yeah.
So just have fun with some other sports.
Yeah, I mean, not always fun. I mean, I hated losing. I was a very bad loser. I think partly that there was a lesson there that I couldn't let stuff go. I would still 3 points later be thinking about the mistake I'd made kind of 5 minutes ago. I found it quite hard to sort of stay in the moment. Yeah. And if you listen to elite sports people, one thing that they say is that you've got to be kind of in the moment. And when something's gone, it's gone. And you've got to forget it and just focus on the next thing and put everything you've got into that moment. But then when it's gone, it's gone.
Let it go.
Yeah, you got to learn to let it go. Yeah. I find it hard to let things go. I don't know. I think it's partly, like I say, now there's a much more developed infrastructure around sort of elite sport. So every kind of Premier League, like this, we're talking now right on the kind of eve of the opening weekend of the new Premier League season, right? Like billions of football fans around the world all kind of join together with that sort of sense of anticipation, because like, this is the weekend where like, everything is still possible, right? But before reality kind of intrudes. But all the like Premier League clubs and even lower level professional league clubs in the UK, they've got now a very well developed infrastructure of scouting and coaching. Even from a very young age, people will be looking to identify the next kind of emerging talent. And, I think that's good and bad, right? That's good because it means that there's a route for kids with talent to kind of get to the very top level. But I do wonder a bit that some of that joy, that playing sport just for the joy of it, you lose a bit of that, because the rewards now are so great if you are one of the few that succeed and kind of move through the system. That like, parents today, if you watch them watching their kids playing football and they're age 4 or 5, already kind of acting like they're watching the Euros final and that their kids are like Jude Bellingham, or the expectation that they load on their kids at such a young age, and the way they kind of the way that coaching kind of becomes part of the kind of experience of kids playing sport at a much younger age. I think it maybe can get in the way of that sort of the experience that I had of really just playing sport for the fun of it, just for the joy of it, you know? Well, I think it's more that a lot of people want to kind of live out their own dreams through their kids, right? Like I'm sure that at some point I dreamed of being playing up front for Leeds United and scoring the goal that won us the league title. And there will be like around the country, not just in Leeds, but in, everywhere, there'll be parents. I suspect, I don't know, but I suspect it's probably dads more than, but maybe like now that women's sport is developing so rapidly, there'll be women that are kind of, again, wanting to live out their sporting dreams through their daughters or sons, right? Not just kind of dads and their sons and daughters, I think it's kind of, that's changed. But I think a lot of it is about living out your own kind of dreams through the kids, because you never quite made it, or you never quite had that sort of, felt you had the opportunity, or it never quite happened for you. But so maybe it can happen for your kids. And like I say, because the rewards are so great that, if you are one of the fortunate or talented few that make it, like you're entering a world of incredible kind of opportunity and wealth and success and fame and all that stuff. So there's always been, and I think there will always be, like a sort of local infrastructure, which is really important, because most sport kind of survives and thrives at a local level, local coaches, people giving up their time, people giving up their Saturday morning or after work or after school, teachers, parents, kind of that's what keeps the whole system kind of moving. And then the kids who are good enough or lucky enough to be spotted, they then get kind of moved into the sort of professional coaching infrastructure around that. I think it's a bit different in China, as I understand it. There's a lot more kind of hot housing. If you spot a kid who's got athletic talent, even if it's not clear what particular sport their greatest talent lies in, from a very early age, they might be moved into some kind of state sort of sports development program. And I've actually been a few years ago now, but I went up to Shenyang in Liaoning, Shenyang Sports University, which is one of the like feeder centers for the Chinese Olympic program. And you kind of go around and you see these incredibly athletic kind of, young men and women kind of running around, jumping, kicking balls, throwing things, it's a great thing. So I think that you have that kind of local infrastructure. Sitting on top of that, you have the sort of infrastructure of professional sports, football clubs, rugby clubs. The professionalization of sport has kind of created a whole new layer of coaching and sort of facilities around that. And then at the very top level, elite level, you've got bodies like UK Sport, and it's their job to basically ensure that the UK continues to produce globally competitive medal-winning athletes in international competitions like the Olympics. And that then becomes very focused on, performance, making sure that funding only goes to those sports where the UK has got a good chance of delivering a medal. So if you look at like the Olympic medalists from the UK, they will largely, I think almost all be part of elite sports programs in their sport. So if they're boxers, they'll be part of the elite boxing program. If they're athletes, they'll be part of that. If they are, whatever sport they're in, they'll be part of an elite program whose funding will be decided ultimately by the number of medals that they win. And if they go to a kind of series of Olympics and they don't deliver medals, some of that funding will be redirected to sports where they feel there is more chance that the UK will win medals. So it's quite kind of cutthroat. I mean, if you are part of that elite program, it's great. But if you're in a sport that loses that funding, then your experience becomes very different and becomes much more difficult, much more like the kind of life of an athlete sort of before all these elite programs and before all the money that came into sport, where you're kind of on your own a bit and you have to look after yourself. You have to find sponsors that will help you. There's a great documentary on, I think, Netflix maybe, about a guy called Daley Thompson. Do you know who Daley Thompson is? He was a decathlete, and he won gold medals in the 1980 and 84 Olympic Games, and he called himself the greatest athlete in the world, because the decathlon is this 10 sport competition, right? You've seen it. And the story of his kind of journey to winning that Olympic medal, he was sleeping on couches, local businesses were giving him, food and drink. He was having to kind of live off other people's kind of generosity just to get himself to the place where he could show his talent to everybody. And I think if you find yourself outside those elite programs, your life kind of returns to a version of that. You're kind of left a bit on your own. And so there are lots of examples of people who've gone through that, and it's not been easy for them. And it's the same for kids who, get a place in the academies of professional football clubs, but then when they get to 17 or 18, they don't get offered a professional contract. And that's such a tough thing. So I think sport now, with that professionalism and with all the rewards that go with it and with all the expectation that goes with it, there are people that never quite make it. And that kind of the sort of difference, the gap between the few people who succeed and the lots of people who kind of fall away, that's such a big gap. It's a really tough thing.
It depends on the performance.
Yeah. At elite level, it's all about the kind of performance. And if you don't deliver the performance, then they'll basically give the money to somebody else. Yeah.
So, Daley Thompson, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's now the Olympic medalist.
Yeah, double Olympic medalist. And he did the thing that he said is the hardest thing that you can do, which is win the Olympic gold medal and break the world record when you're doing it. And that's what he did. That's what he did in Moscow in 1980. And he may have done it again in Los Angeles in 1984, I can't remember. But he's one of the greatest sort of British sports people that I think there's probably ever been.
Yes, he's the podcaster of the World Athletics Inside Track podcast.
Right, okay. So he's
just during the Paris 2024.
Okay. Oh, I didn't know that, but that's good. It's good because I think that people like someone like that, an elite athlete that's achieved as much as he's achieved, has got so much to offer to kind of inspire other people to tell their story. It would be a shame that they didn't have a platform to do that.
No, he's quite famous.
Yeah, well, look, he was like when I was a kid, when I was like 11, 12-year-olds, he was one of the most famous people in the UK. I mean, maybe he was one of the most famous people in the world for the period of those Olympic games that he was competing in. Yeah.
He's an Olympic champion.
Yeah, twice over. Not many people get to do that. Yeah, fair enough. I think he was one of these guys, right, that could have been good at kind of pretty much any sport. He just had that kind of natural ability. I think he was a good footballer. He could have played, maybe not at the very top level, but he could have played in the kind of lower league football quite comfortably. If you gave him a bat and a ball within like about 5 minutes, he would have worked out what to do with it and been just like known instinctively kind of what to do, I think some people are like that.
Yes.
People like that. Not many, but some people.
He's a decathlon athlete, so he
he turned his hand because I think he started as a sprinter and then there was just like at some point a coach recognized that actually you could be more than just a sprinter. You could be like, you could do kind of anything really. And if you do that, then they're going to call you the greatest athlete in the world because you're not just doing one thing. Well, you're doing 10 things. Yeah. Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, it's quite impressive.
那聊天已经接近尾声了。众所周知，我跟南子都是忠实的阿森纳球迷，当然要聊一嘴英超了。作为英超众多海外拥趸之一，我们也曾听到一些本地球迷的说法，认为海外球迷并不是死忠，不过是看看电视而已。那对于本地球迷 Dom 而言，他怎么看待他们的球队的海外粉丝呢？
Well, I think it's a different kind of relationship, right? It's if you grow up in Leeds, then you're kind of growing up with the history of the club and the famous players that have played for it all around you, right? But that doesn't mean that if you kind of discover Leeds or, Man City or Liverpool or whoever it might be from like 5,000 miles away, that the emotion is different. Like the investment that you make in the team and its success is the same. Right? I don't think that. So I'll give you an example of this. Right? At the end of last season, I went to watch the playoff game between Leeds and Southampton, which would determine whether Leeds were promoted back up into the Premier League or would spend another year in the Championship. And obviously we lost and we were rubbish. And I was watching the game with a guy from Denmark, right? And he was just as absolutely gutted about it as I was, right? And he knew just as much about the history of the club as I did. And he'd lived through all the same disappointments and occasional kind of moments of joy that I had. And his, how he felt was no different from how I felt. We were born in different places. We'd kind of arrived at our relationship with the club in different ways, but how we felt about it, the kind of love, the frustration, the kind of obsession was exactly the same. So I don't feel that sort of sniffiness that some fans have about their kind of international supporters. If someone loves Leeds United, I embrace that. I welcome it, right? Because it's of course the only correct kind of position to hold. Everybody should love Leeds United, right? But so if somebody does that, and I know that the investment in every sense, right? The investment of emotion, the investment of time that you spend thinking about the club and looking into its history and all the players that ever played for it and all the kind of matches that it's won and lost and all that kind of thing. But also the financial investment, right? Yeah. The time and money you spend following that team, however you do it, whether that's if you're lucky enough to kind of travel back to the UK, which I know you've done, to watch your team, Arsenal, which I think your listeners will know is Arsenal. You've probably mentioned that before as well. That's a significant investment, right? Significant investment. And your investment is just like my investment, the thing that helps our team be competitive in this kind of very competitive world of modern football. Without you and without me, they would be much less able to compete. And football without fans that care about it and love their team, even if their team often drive them mad, stops being the sport that we love, right? It stops being the same thing. It becomes a different product and a different experience. So, of course, that connection between a club and the city that it was founded in is important. It's an essential thing. I know that from coming from Leeds and how important the club is to the city. But I also know, like I said, that the love and pain that goes with being a Leeds fan is universal. It doesn't matter if you come from Leeds or Chongqing or Beijing or Freetown in Sierra Leone or, in the North Pole. It's the same feeling. And you can't fake emotion, really. What you feel when you kind of see your team win, lose. If it's real, it's real. And if it's real, then it's the same whoever you are and wherever you are. Yeah, for me, more downs than ups and more sorrows than happy. But, that's the other great thing, right? At the start of a new season, the future is still unwritten. It's filled with every possibility. So, it's only when kind of reality starts kind of tapping you on the shoulder and reminding you that maybe you're not going to win the league this season by
we will.
100 and 120 points or whatever. But yeah, I think that's the thing that makes sport universal. That the love that I feel as a fan of Leeds that was born and brought up there is the same love that a guy born in Denmark feels, the same love that a woman born in Beijing might feel if that's their team. So that's what makes it universal, and that's why it's so powerful, and that's why we all love it, right?
I want to know your comment about Southgate.
So I think he did a great job as England manager. He did a great job as England manager. He reconnected the team with the country. He conducted himself brilliantly. He was a great, articulate spokesperson, not just for English football, but for England as a country. He represented lots of the things that are best about us. As a fan watching the team, he could be frustrating. I think he was quite a cautious manager, and he achieved better results than I think pretty much any modern English football manager. And maybe even any football manager. Obviously, like the most famous England manager is Sir Alf Ramsey because he's the guy that won the World Cup. But very few managers that followed him have come close to replicating that level of success. And Southgate, in the last 3 or 4 international competitions, has reached the final twice, semi-final once, quarterfinals. The England team has been more successful than any generation of England fans has seen kind of in decades. But, you know, England fans, they're never happy, right? They're never satisfied with anything. And I think they just felt that like there was potential in this team. We had players with this talent to do more, and that at a certain point, Southgate just didn't seem to be able to get over that finishing line, that his innate kind of caution as a manager, trying to kind of manage a game and defend Leeds, meant that in the end we just fell a little bit short. So I think everyone should be really grateful to him for everything that he achieved. I don't know what he's going to go on to do next, but I think every England fan should wish him success. But I think at the end of the day, yeah, the thing that happened was that the fans kind of started to turn a little bit towards the end because they felt that he was just a bit too cautious as a manager and he wasn't getting everything out of the squad that there was in there, that we were just coming up a little bit short. So whether that turns out to be true or whether actually he was getting absolutely the maximum level of performance out of that group of players that anybody could have got, I guess time will tell, and it will depend on who they hire as the next manager. There's an interim manager at the moment. The guy who was the head of the under-21 team has kind of stepped up to, and it may be that they'll make a decision on a permanent manager in slightly slower time because things change in football, and you never know who might become available. Who do I want? Well, look, to be honest, and I think this is like your listeners might be surprised to hear it. I don't know, but I think I'm not unique in that I care much more about my club team than I do about the England national team. And actually, kind of partly because I've got divided loyalties because my mum's Scottish, and so actually I follow the Scottish national team as well. But I think it's true actually that most fans actually are much more invested in their club team than they are in the national team. Really, if you ask them, what would you rather have? Would you rather have your club win the Premier League title and the European Cup, or England win the Euros? I think most, maybe I'm wrong, but I think most would say, I'd like my club team to win. But if you're looking at who are the elite managers in the world, who are the ones that have shown that they can deliver kind of exceptional performance, you're looking at people like Klopp, Guardiola. And I know that Guardiola's contract with City runs out at the end of this season. So if there was a world in which Klopp decided he'd had a long enough rest break from football and wanted to get back into it, or Guardiola decided that he'd finished his kind of project at Man City and he wanted to kind of have a new challenge, then a manager like that, someone like Klopp or Guardiola would be great. I'm not one of those people that thinks that the manager of the England national team has to be an English manager. I think you want the best person for the job, whoever whoever that person is. So yeah, I don't know. I'm like I say, maybe if we were just kind of picking from a wish list, maybe Pep or Klopp.
那最后的最后，我们也请 Dom 来推荐一些他觉得来英国不可错过的体育赛事，希望大家有机会也可以现场体验一下。
Yeah, well, the first, again, this is another thing where the UK kind of is where it all kind of began in a sense. So modern F1 racing, the first modern Formula One Grand Prix was at Silverstone back in, I think, about 1950, 51, something like that. And even today, I think 7 out of the 10 F1 teams are based in the UK. And a lot of them clustered around the Silverstone area. And look, I think it's an incredible sort of feat of precision engineering and human kind of ability, right? It's the kind of the coming together of like machinery and kind of humans with incredible reflexes and athleticism and judgment and all those kind of things. And I think the F1 Grand Prix in the UK is probably the single sporting event in the year that gets the most visitors over like a 3-day weekend, right? Over a 3-day weekend, it gets like 200,000 plus people will attend that event. And it's hugely popular amongst the kind of TV viewing audience as well. And obviously now back in China after a few years away, which is good to see. And China's got its own F1 driver in Zhou Guanyu, who we've worked with at the embassy, and he's a very nice guy. And so I think that I can see why I'm not like a massive petrol head, right? I don't really kind of get into the sort of details of cars and engines and all that kind of stuff. But I do like watching F1, and I like it more when it's competitive. I think when you get to a situation like there's been in the last few years where one driver and one car is kind of super dominant, it becomes a less interesting spectacle, right? But when it's competitive and when people are kind of racing wheel to wheel, the kind of courage that takes and the judgment that takes and the kind of ability that takes, that's incredibly exciting. So I like that. I enjoy that. Yeah. But I think, like, again, you've been lucky, I know, enough to go and not just watch kind of Premier League matches at the Emirates, watching your beloved Arsenal play, but you've also been to Wimbledon and you've seen matches on the centre court there. I think that there is something special about seeing these events for real, in real life, in the place that comes with all that history kind of sitting behind it and around it, and you feel that you're part of this kind of great tradition that stretches back like decades, or in some cases like hundreds of years, and will stretch hopefully kind of forward into the future. So that's a great thing. Anybody who's got an opportunity to do that, I would definitely encourage them to kind of go to the UK and experience something like that. Obviously it's an expensive thing, and it's very kind of hard to get tickets, I know, but I think you would probably agree with me that if you've got the opportunity to do that, you've got the resources to do that, it's worth it, because there's not really anything quite like it. Not really anything quite like it. And I've been lucky enough to see some big sporting kind of events in the UK, to sort of visit, to watch a test match at Lord's or at the Oval in cricket match, and also watch a cricket match in India, which is completely crazy. It's completely crazy, but great. I mean, like a great thing. And I've I remember really vividly the first time I went to see a football match for real as a young kid, especially an evening game where you walk up the stairs and you see the pitch laid out in front of you with the floodlights. It's an incredible kind of dramatic moment that really stays with you. But like going to see Guoan in Beijing, I get a version of that same feeling, right? There's every time you kind of set foot in a football stadium and walk up the steps and see that kind of green illuminated pitch in front of you, you get that same kind of kick of like emotion and feeling and excitement about what you're going to see. So I think that's the same like for everyone, but seeing it in these kind of incredibly historic historical kind of venues adds an extra special kind of something to it. So if you could get the chance to go to see a Premier League or any Football League game in the UK, or a rugby match at Twickenham or Murrayfield, or, you know, the Formula One at Silverstone, or tennis at Wimbledon, I'd do it. It's a once in a lifetime, or maybe if you've got a bit more money, like a few times in a lifetime, I don't know. But it's an incredible thing that will stay with you. Yeah, it's great. I mean, all these stadiums, when they're empty, they're kind of filled with the ghosts of all the great sports people that have kind of played there, right? And you can kind of, if you've got a good guide, you can get a sense of that, all the history that there's been and all the kind of great players and great matches that have taken place in that kind of space. And you do get a kind of feel for it. So it's definitely worth doing that if you get the chance, yeah.
When I visit the Old Trafford,
it's in my contract that we're not allowed to talk about Old Trafford or Manchester United. I thought we'd established that. I think we all become kind of 8 years old again in a situation like that, right? We kind of go back to feeling of being, you know, children again, and that same sort of you know, thrill that you get. So I don't even reluctantly, he has to admit, even at Old Trafford, I can imagine maybe that you might feel a little bit of that. Yeah. Yeah. For people who don't know, Leeds and Manchester United aren't really very, very good friends. So you'll forgive me. All the Manchester United fans that listen to this podcast will have to forgive me for not being more enthusiastic about Old Trafford.
You are not rivals, you are good friends.
Well, frenemies maybe. I mean, I think our existence would be poorer without the other. You know, every kind of everybody needs their own kind of arch enemy, don't they? Even if, you know, our kind of different trajectories have gone in kind of different directions in the last few years, it's still good to have rivalry is part of sport, right? Rivalry is part of sport. And even if you can't take pleasure in your own success, you can at least take delight in your enemy's failure. So I would like to thank Manchester United for at least giving me that in the last few years, and let's have more of that this season, please. Thank you. Well, yeah, I might have to emigrate to Mars or something if that happens again. But yeah, I appreciate the thought.
So Leeds will come back.
Inevitably, one day. I don't know which day, but one day. Yeah, one day. That's the other thing, isn't it, about all sports fans, is that they live in hope, right? And every new year, most of the time, is the kind of, the start of a season is the kind of triumph of hope over experience, really. Because like for most teams, most seasons, you know, they will end in relative failure. Only one team can win the league. Only 4 teams can get in the top 4. Only 6 teams in the Premiership can qualify for Europe. Only one team can win the cup. So like any season, most clubs and their fans will experience a kind of relative failure, right? But we're prepared to kind of put up with that because those rare moments of success are so incredible, so wonderful, so unforgettable that it's worth putting up with all the disappointment just for those moments of kind of inspiration or individual brilliance, or those kind of the moments when you kind of can get lost in that kind of common emotion. When you know that, like when, you know, Leeds scored that kind of goal to win the game in the last minute, it's not just like me from Leeds, but it's the guy from Beijing and the guy from, you know, Denmark, and, you know, all those other fans around the world that care about the club as much as you do, that are going just as crazy as you are.
Just like I said, we share the same emotion.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's the universal thing, and that's why sport is such a great thing, and that's why your podcast is such a great thing as well, because I think this is one of these things that is a kind of universal connector. Yeah, I certainly found that. Like, I've worked in different places in Africa, in South Asia, in China, And sport's a way into kind of conversations with kind of all kinds of different people who otherwise you might think you don't have anything in common with, but you can find that common ground in sport.
It's a worldwide language.
It is, yeah. In my case, often bad language, but it is a language, yeah. Well, listen, I think we're lucky to have people like you who have found the UK as a place that for them is a source of like passion and joy and emotion and excitement, and are kind of willing to spend their hard-earned kind of money and time traveling to the UK to experience sport there. And I hope more people will do that, because I think it is like you're a much better advocate of it than I am, but it's a great thing that will enrich your life if you do it, and it'll give you experiences that you'll never forget. So let's here's to you and more like you. Only one sport. Well, football is my sport, right? Football is the game that I love more than any other game. So I would say if you get the chance to go and see a really big derby game in either the Premier League or the Scottish top league, or I would say that more than an international match, I think, because you get a sense of like the tribalism of British football if you go and watch a league game, not an international game. So I would say if you can get a ticket to watch Leeds the next time Man United or Liverpool come to Elland Road, and if you can get a ticket in the Kop, you'll learn a lot of new language. But it will be an incredibly memorable experience. And now there are some really world-class stadiums. You've been to one in the Emirates, but like Tottenham Hotspur have got an incredible stadium. Like Liverpool have redeveloped their stadium into kind of one of the best stadiums in the UK. If you go to Scotland, then Glasgow Celtic have got an incredible kind of stadium, and the Glasgow derby, the kind of old firm game between Celtic and Rangers, you learn even more interesting new language there. So I would say football, but also I think the great thing about the UK is there's kind of something for everybody there. If tennis is your thing, then go to Wimbledon. If rugby's your thing, then try and see a Six Nations game at at Twickenham in England, or Murrayfield in Scotland, or the Millennium Stadium in Cardiff. If Formula One is your thing, go to the Grand Prix at Silverstone, yeah. And if horse racing is your thing, then go to the Cheltenham Gold Cup or the Grand National or Royal Ascot. If sailing is your thing, then go to the kind of Henley Regatta, or come out on the day of the kind of Oxford-Cambridge boat race, and kind of a group of friends just come and stand on the river on one of the bridges and watch them go past. Like there's something for everybody there. So I don't want or expect other people to kind of follow just my kind of preferences. There's enough there for everybody. Well, if you love running, yeah, there'll be like Golden League events in the UK, obviously, also. And the Olympic Stadium that was kind of built for the 2012 Olympics doubles up as it's permanent, I think, or like during the football season, obviously it's the home ground for West Ham United, but it's also used for other events, including athletics events. And the UK, like in recent years, has hosted a lot of big international events. So Glasgow last summer hosted the World Cycling Championships. The UK stepped in to host the Euros in kind of 2021, I think 2021. We are always kind of competing, or among those competing, to host these big international sporting events, including athletics events. So yeah, just wait long enough, and like London buses, if you wait long enough, one will come along that's the right one for you. So even for athletics, there'll be something for you. Yeah, no. What's Arsenal's first match of the season? Who are you playing? Wolves. Okay, so Wolves owned by Fosun, Chinese company. Yes. Yeah. So, and they've got they did quite well last season, Wolves. So, but Arsenal, you must have high expectations for this season. What do you think? Is this the year that you kind of take the crown from Man City, or are you going to just come up a bit short again?
I believe.
Yeah, well, look, that's the right answer, right? You should. If you can't believe now, then when are you going to believe?
Yeah.
This should be the season.
Yeah. All right. Well, we can come back in May and you can tell me if you were right or not.
We'll be right.
Yeah. Good. Well, look, I hope for your sake, I hope so. You've been very generous host. So in that being the case, I wish, and because as a Leeds fan, I don't really hate Arsenal that much. So, I don't mind if you win the league. That's okay with me. I guess given what I said before about F1 and it being boring if the same people win all the time, it would be hypocritical of me to hope that Man City won again. So I don't if this year's Arsenal's turn and they kind of, deliver, then I won't be sad about that. I'll be okay with that.
Way too.
Great. For now, anything is possible. Anything is possible. You could be the next Invincibles.
Maybe.
Anything is possible.
Yeah. 49. I got that song.
No, that's good. It's good. Well, thank you for inviting me, and thank you for listening to all the things I had to say. And I hope, I hope there'll be enough in there for you to make something that you think people will want to listen to. Great. Thank you. All right.